Welcome everyone to another installment of CMTK podcast Speculative Sophont Silurian Hypothesis Special, where your hosts, myself, CM Kosemen, and my good friend TK Sivgin go through every geological era of the world and imagine the civilization building species which may have evolved from the creatures that inhabited those years. And now this is the third episode of this long-running podcast series. We don't know how many episodes we're going to have in this, but it certainly is the best, because today we will be tackling the dinosaur era, so to speak, the three epochs of the Mesozoic, and I'm sure this is going to be the most interesting one of this entire series. And before starting and handing the mic over to my friend TK, I just would like you to listen to me eating a cucumber now. These cucumbers don't grow on trees. Well, they grow underground, but the metaphor I'm trying to make here is this thing, it's a free podcast on a very interesting and very niche subject. So we would really appreciate if you could put your money where your minds are and support me or TK Sivgin on our Patreon links. The links are below. And if you're already supporting me, I'm imploring you to donate at least $1 a month to TK, or if you're donating $1 a month to me or TK, maybe drive that up a little, make it $2 a month, $5, anything. Every penny is really appreciated. And with that being said, this is the best era the Earth has ever had to enjoy, the age of the dinosaurs and their interesting reptilian relatives. So I'm handing the mic over to TK Sivgin now. Obviously, we are starting from the Cretaceous period. And what's your whole take on this entire situation?
Well, the Cretaceous. Well, first we have to contextualize ourselves. The Cretaceous lasted from 66 million years ago to 145 million years ago. That is a long ass time.
Usually it's divided in two halves sometimes.
Yeah, it is 79. It is a duration of 79 million years, so longer than the entire Cenozoic.
Yeah. So, just to contextualize, the Cretaceous period itself is longer than anything happened after it. So
exactly.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
mind-boggling.
So we should probably do it like the geologists and discuss the late and early Cretaceous separately.
Yep.
So the late Cretaceous.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think could have lived in that time period that could have approached intelligence?
Well, my knowledge about this thing is not as deep as you might imagine, but I do know that the late Cretaceous was a time of diversification for Maniraptor and theropod, Velociraptor type things, or their distant cousins, the Theriznosaurs, the Oviraptorosaurs and everything.
Yes, and the Troodontids, which, as probably everyone knows that is listening to this podcast, Troodontids are, for fiction writers, the candidate for dinosaur intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's a go-to dinosauroid at this point, even from the days of the old, more reptile-grade dinosauroids. Troodont, if you want an intelligent dinosaur, you go to Troodonts. And heck, even in that cryptoterrestrial paper we read in our past episode, the authors were quoting a species of dinosaur called the Troodon, which was really funny because, you could speak about things like that in everyday conversation, but in a scientific paper, it was kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I think those things were really strong candidates for dinosaur sapiency. You did mention another species before we started recording. And was this a late Cretaceous form as well, or?
That was Bambiraptor, which was a dromaeosaur, so a full-on relative of Velociraptor. Let me just, I have, for context, I have on my knees right now the Princeton Field Guide to Dinosaurs, the 3rd edition by Gregory S. Paul, which it has some critics, but I think it is still a good basis for research. Yes, Bambiraptor lived in the late Cretaceous in the Campanian.
Okay, so this was imagine a smaller version of Velociraptor with longer hands and I think a bigger head, right?
Yes. Yes, like I think there are some theories that this was actually just a juvenile, and that's why the proportions are like that.
Yeah, but it again echoes with human evolution, because it has been often quoted that humans themselves or hominids themselves are pedomorphic or juvenile morph descendants of larger apes. And
that is a good point, yes. Anyway, the interesting thing about Bambiraptor is that it is theorized to have been arboreal and that it had an opposable thumb.
yeah, I mean, so that's a certain candidate. And I think even as they exist now, I mean, there's no need to stretch any of this into fantasy land. But even as this thing exists now, you can be pretty certain it was a very vocal creature. Remember, a lot of parrots alive today have intelligences exceeding that of a 6-year-old child. They're very smart. They can talk, they can build tools, they can solve complex problems. Not just parrots, but even more quote-unquote mundane birds such as crows. And there's no reason to imagine that something like this did not go on among dinosaurs themselves. So I would say already a strong contender would be an arboreal, maybe like Ewok dinosaur people descending from something like Bambiraptor. And then also the usual suspects, intelligent ground-living troodonts. Maybe they live amongst scrubland or some maquis-like environment, and they weave together little huts and nests. And basically, this is something we really explored with another one of my good friends, Simon Roy. And him and I created, almost 10 years ago now, this entire world of dinosauroids. And I think I'm going to include the link in the link description too. And so something like that was really possible. Speaking of opposable thumbs, I have my doubts about how, a lot of dinosaurs, especially predatory dinosaurs, had free hands and they could move these about like opposable thumbs. But I'm always curious to know if these would have been ever used like the hominid hand, or if they would be of a more limited utility, maybe just like claspers to hold on. So imagine you're grasping a long brush or like a long chopstick between your thumb and forefinger, but you don't really grasp it, because the sort of like human style palm assisted grasp, it's very unique to the human hand anatomy.
That is true. Yeah, because all of these theropods, they only had 3 fingers. So if the thumb is used to oppose something, the other 2 fingers aren't very good at holding onto something like a stick. So it is actually more likely that they mostly use their mouths to hold things, just like birds do.
I'm sure like they could use them to grasp things like clothespins and maybe carry them tucked into the sides of their bodies, but the overall range of motion would be limited. Like imagine a human being can grab a stone and rotate it almost 270 degrees in a sphere and then throw it, move it, twist it. But these dinosaur body plans, regardless of the species, even if it had completely opposable thumbs, it seems that the arm was sort of locked in a wing-like folded pattern against the side of the body. So that's
a good point you bring up, that theropods did not have the same range of arm movements as primates do.
Yeah.
You often see that in outdated reconstructions where they're holding their hands in this bunny-like posture, and now we know they couldn't actually do that. They could not pronate their wrists, they couldn't rotate their wrists around their own axis like we do. And instead the arm was permanently locked in this almost clapping posture with the palms facing each other.
I remember this. I think it was the earliest Jurassic World movie with was it the Indoraptor dinosaur?
Indoraptor was in the second Jurassic World movie. I think you mean the Indominus, the big one, right?
Sorry, the Indominus dinosaur.
Yeah.
It was the one with the haunted house and the little girl is sleeping.
That is again the second.
Okay, that's the one. So I'm always reminded of that scene where the girl is sleeping in the bed and a big long dinosaur hand comes in and grasps the sheet.
Yeah, like Nosferatu.
Yeah, like Nosferatu. But if you lay that scene out, even the model of the creature as it is given in the film cannot do that movement. Like it has to be headless. Like the head of the animal goes before the hands. So these are all exploring the point you just made about the head being the primary organ to interact with the world. But I think there's no reason to categorically deny it either. I'm sure they could like tuck little sticks or things under their wings and maybe use them to hold other objects. Maybe they could imagine they could weave rope somehow, and they could use one end of the rope or the string or whatever they use.
Or they just use their mouth and hands in tandem.
Exactly.
We humans do the same sometimes, don't we? Like we sometimes also use our mouths to hold onto something. And I think there is some theory that Neanderthals actually did that even more than we do, and that they use their mouth like a third hand.
I mean, even these days now, as I paint, I usually find myself holding a smaller brush in my mouth and stuff. So there are always varying degrees of that. If you look at other great apes, orangutans, they're extremely dexterous with their lips. They could tie knots in their cheeks or stuff like that. I don't know how they do it, but yeah, those things are magical. Apologies, by the way. I need to eat a lot of cool salted cucumbers for my nervous system to function, because we are recording on the 10th of July 2024 and we are going through a heck of a heat wave. But back at opposable fingers, now this reminded me of this exciting discovery a few years ago where they announced this pterosaur with an opposable
I
tongue.
also wanted to talk about that, but that's from the Jurassic, so we'll get to that later.
Okay. Also, another strong contender, my strong contender for an intelligent dinosaur species would be like a prairie dog type of digging ornithopod, and they would live in colonies and just communally dig underground and nest together.
Like meerkats.
Like meerkats, exactly, but maybe a herbivorous or omnivorous versions of meerkat. So yeah, tribes of meerkat mimicking ornithopod are also very likely. And
yeah, I also think ornithopods are like always underlooked in these dinosauroid discussions, because I know it is interesting how in these discussions about like which types of animals are likely to develop intelligence, people always gravitate towards predators or carnivores, even though the earliest humans were omnivorous at best. Like Australopithecines and even earlier hominins, most of the diet consisted of plants, and they already had tools and such. And like carnivory is something we only developed as our tools got better at killing animals.
I think there's a bit of the coolness factor coming into play there. And also I think even to a contemporary observer or a contemporary speculator, this trope about herbivorous dinosaurs being dumb is one that is hard to kill. So I think there's that and that going into it. But yeah, looking at a lot of ornithopods. By the way, there are a lot of very strange ornithopods that also don't get appreciated. What was the kind that lived in the Hell Creek Formation? I think it was Tesselosaurus.
Yes, Tescelosaurus.
Yeah.
That one was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, and I think nobody is really clear about what that thing is related to.
I mean, Tescelosauridae is its own family.
Yeah.
And I think it is related to Oryctodromeus and this other one that I forgot the name of, and Nanosaurus, which are all really interesting because we have actually found them dead inside their burrows.
Yep.
So we know that they were actually digging underground to hide from predators or to sleep.
Probably communal too. And what's interesting about those creatures is that people usually assume herbivorous ornithopod evolution in the following stages. They think there were these small running herbivores first, things like Heterodontosaurus or related species, and then the conventional wisdom says these got bigger and evolved into iguanodonts, and those gave rise to hadrosaurs. But if you look at it, actually Tesselosaurus was, I think, one of the last dinosaurs. So there was a distinct niche for small-bodied herbivorous or maybe omnivorous ornithischians well into the end of the dinosaur era.
Yes, and all of these small ones, they used to be classified in just single family Hypsilophodontidae, but that one just kind of broke up, and like the Beatles, and and yeah, like it was all just a lot of separate families of small or not even ornithopods, just ornithischians in general. Like some of them were not even ornithopods. They all lived until the end of the Cretaceous. Yeah, now that I mentioned, I think Tesculosaurida isn't actually within Ornithopoda, but they are. I think they are even more closely related to the Marginocephalians, which are like the horned dinosaurs. Wait.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yes, I need to look that up again. Or yeah, I think it is. Okay, it is. Okay, it is the sister group to the Theropoda, and Theropoda is the group that includes both Ornithopoda and Marginocephalia.
Oh, so a very specialized outlier. And there was this also really strange dinosaur. I even did a podcast about it. Chilesaurus.
Yeah, that one is also Jurassic.
Is it?
Yeah.
But it was doing something very strange. And
the Chilesaurus, the one that they just cannot classify.
Yeah, and there was another one. There was another one. I don't think it's a Cretaceous form, but there was another thing that had like a long face and a bipedal lifestyle. I think Isaberisaura, and I think in the last analysis that thing turned out to be a plateless stegosaur, which is fascinating if you think about it.
Oh yeah, Isaberisaur. I love that one. That one is really cool.
When did it live?
I mean, Barjosian. So that is the Middle Jurassic.
Oh, okay. So we'll get there.
Yeah.
But one strange thing about the Mesozoic is that we were considering all these animals in the past in the Oligocene and, well, the Miocene. And although those time periods were inhabited by many strange mammals, we could not find many contenders for intelligent species ancestors. But now in the Mesozoic, suddenly there's like potential candidates popping up from among every lineage, and it's just, maybe it's a sign of our bias, and actually maybe a lot of these animals were just like Xenarthans, dumb. But also maybe before the great reset caused by the dinosaur killing asteroid, actually these animals were evolving really sophisticated and really social forms with all the most advantageous nervous system dynamics still enjoyed by a lot of bird species in the present day. I don't know.
You mean mammals now, or?
No, dinosaurs themselves. Like, we're like making up, I think even in this like 20 minutes, we came up with like 4 different groups that could have created intelligent forms. And we surveyed the entire Cenozoic, and we could only find a few forms. So I wonder if that's about our bias because we like dinosaurs more, or whether dinosaurs really did have something good going on for the possibility.
I think it also just has to do with time.
Yep.
Because the dinosaurs, like at the end of the Cretaceous, they have been ruling Earth without that many major incidents for like 150 million years. And the Cenozoic isn't even half of that time. So in a sense, we are still living in this post-apocalyptic world created by the asteroid.
Yeah.
So it's no wonder that life took so long.
Hasn't found a way yet. Although it did, I mean.
Yeah, that is true. Like we are, in the grand scheme of things, we appeared relatively fast after the asteroid.
Yeah.
We have the first apes about 30 million years ago. So that's like halfway point between the extinction of the dinosaurs and today.
But maybe that supports what we've been discussing, because in twice as much time, maybe there actually were a lot of intelligent tribal dinosaurs running around with Stone Age technology. They just came up, maybe a species of Stone Age level ornithopods here, a species of Stone Age level even pterosaurs there, or some Stone Age level social bird-like maniraptorans there, and that's that.
Yeah, but the thing is, then you would find evidence. No, you would find stone tools if that had been the case.
Yeah, that's something I keep repeating, and that's why I think there were no intelligent species before us. But since this whole series is a big, long, speculative exercise, I'm just entertaining every possibility here.
Yes, or maybe they were only using wood, like in that Stephen Baxter story we talked about.
Yeah, true.
That's the funny thing, like a lot of the stone tools, a lot of the flints that early humans used come from stone deposits that were created in the Cretaceous.
Okay.
So you could argue maybe the dinosaurs that lived in the Cretaceous, they didn't have the resources yet to create stone tools, because the necessary flint deposits had not formed yet.
I'm sure there was like some sort of stone that just did not reach us.
Yeah, true. I'm just spitballing.
Yeah, but like certainly though, like some patterns of like peculiarly smashed bones or peculiarly broken, or just even if they were just discarded in one big pile, things like shellfish remains or other bones. Like imagine discovering the midden of a race of hunter dinosaurs, and you don't need to find any tools, but there's clearly this place like a pit that they've dug, and it's full of disarticulated skeletons of a certain type of animal, and that would be like equal to finding a statue or something.
That reminds me, do you know the Ceruti Mastodon site, I think in California?
I think, yeah, the site they used to tentatively date human presence in North America to like 120,000 BC or something.
No, I think even like 300,000 BC, at which point it may have even been Neanderthals. So basically that site, it's about an array of mastodon bones that are arranged and broken in very weird, almost deliberate ways. And discoverers argue that this is like signs of human activity, that these animals were like broken down by humans using like stone anvils. And I think a big counter argument by other archaeologists is that these bones would have been arranged that way in a completely natural way, because you can also find sometimes dinosaur bones arranged in the same way. And of course, the most parsimonious answer is to say, okay, that is evidence that this happened naturally. Or you could say maybe those dinosaur bones were also butchered through intelligent activity.
I mean, maybe the entire absence of large sauropod bones is because somebody was just hunting and eating them, leaving nothing behind.
I mean, that is something that Stephen Baxter exploits. Like after the Jurassic, we had this big extinction event of sauropods. Like they didn't go completely extinct, but many groups went extinct. And in the late Cretaceous, you only had one group anymore, the Titanosaurs.
Yep.
Who even went temporarily completely extinct in North America before invading again from the south. And yeah, maybe that is and Baxter attributes that extinction event to a race of intelligent ornitholestes that hunted them.
Oh, this is in Evolution, his book, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a really nice recommendation, by the way. I wish he stopped at the human chapters, though, because I think the way he tackles human societies and stuff there is really devoid of realism. But yeah, otherwise a great book.
Yeah, he is a bit of a product of his time. Yeah. And the far future chapters, there's only 2 of them. They aren't really that interesting because you notice like a lot of the creature designs he copied from Dougal Dixon.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was this like one guy who's like symbiotically intertwined with a tree.
Exactly. That is the last human.
Yeah, he goes to sleep inside the tree and wakes up and like actually even poops in the tree, and it's a good feeling. So ultimate Coomer. Going back to dinosaurs.
Wait. While we were on Dougal Dixon, he actually did in the new dinosaurs. He actually created this idea of eusocial mini dinosaurs, like you were imagining.
Oh yeah, the hammerheads.
Yeah, exactly. The little pachycephalosaurs with their queen and such.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a great concept. And they were building nests in trees or something and crawling into them.
Yeah, almost like beavers, but on land.
Yeah, and the illustrations were, I'm afraid to say, really disgusting, but the artist made a point of trying to make them a little like gray aliens, even, or maybe like rat-like things. I don't know, but yeah, it's a very uncanny book, The New Dinosaurs, by the way.
Yeah, I love it though. Like it's so much of its time.
Yeah.
At the same time, but it also was kind of ahead of its time, and I know it's such a unique product. You cannot replicate it again.
Yeah, and the sad thing is a book like that would not be marketed today. Like what I'm fascinated by is the vision the publishers had. Even though it was a very uncanny and imperfect thing, the publishers were able to say, okay, let's go ahead with this, and I'm like make money from it. If anybody wrote a book like that now, they would have to just go to Kickstarter or just maybe collect pre-orders or something. So yeah, a nice artifact of an age before the internet where books could find that sort of leverage.
The good times before the empire, or what does Obi-Wan say?
What was it?
A more civilized time for the empire.
A gentler weapon from a more civilized era?
Yeah, something like a more elegant weapon from a more civilized era. When he talks
All
about the
right.
lightsaber, yeah.
Just a second. We have the cleaning lady here. We'll cut here. Don't hang up, but I'll say goodbye.
Okay, we're live again.
Okay, and getting back at dinosaurs, one of the commenters in the previous episode mentioned something about the possibility of a tool using therizinosaur because they had very long claws and maybe he or she suggested they could be advantageous in manipulation. But what is your take on that? I think at least therizinosaurs, that seems a bit unlikely to me.
I mean, yeah, especially for like the late big ones like Notoronychus and Therizinosaurus. But I am on the chapter of the book of Paul's book about this. And see, these are like some of the earlier Therizinosaurs that were like still small and unspecialized.
Like Falcarius or Beipaiosaurus. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe they had some proclivity towards holding things with their hands.
Yeah, I'm looking at illustrations of Falcarius utahensis, and yeah, this book is a great book, by the way. You're very lucky to have this book. And this illustration is new. I think it's the Jiangshangsaurus, one of the more ancestral forms.
Jiangshangsaurus, yeah.
Yeah, they do look like. So imagine a small-bodied dinosaur with a long tail and a longish neck and a deep body, but instead of the killer Freddy Krueger claws of Therizinosaurus, these guys have like chopstick-like or like spike-like claws that still seem kind of mobile in Greg Paul's reconstruction. Although I would still say they're too closely locked in the sort of wing-like folded format. And instead of a manipulator, I think these things evolved in the following way. They're these huge claws, and they're attached to muscles and an arm structure that would drive wing beats in the evolution of the bird. So this would just go like flap at its enemies. Like if you've ever been attacked by a goose or a pigeon, like pigeons also do that too apparently. They just swat you with their wings. Like they go flap and then there. So imagine something like a pigeon hit, but instead of a pigeon's soft wing, you have a, door-sized animal with really, really long claws. So I think these were defensive weapons, not even used for stripping bark. They would just swat them at like theropods and just defend themselves. That's my humble personal take on these things. So it would make for like, I'm curious why nobody animated this in a movie, but even the smaller therizinosaurs would be like really, like you wouldn't want to face them, they would run up to you and go like with their wings and like chat, and in 3 strikes you have like gashes in your arm or body. And yeah, don't even get me started on what something huge like Therizinosaurus could do with these like 1 meter long claws just going. I think there was a really great speculative evolution project called the Spec World project.
Yeah, they tried to make the new dinosaurs, but more scientifically accurate. And ironically, the project took so long that it itself has now become inaccurate in many ways.
Yeah.
And that's why, unfortunately, work on it kind of stopped.
Yeah, it was just a particular time in internet history, but yeah, some good times. And one of the creatures there was, they had lineages of these polar therizinosaurs, which were like mammoths or even reindeer. So they had more compact bodies. They were not gigantic, but they had enormous claws that just poked out from the underside of their fur. And they were very furry, so they looked like hairy people carrying swords, basically. And I always found those creatures fascinating. In fact, I think that was one of the inspirations for the Panderavis creature I created for All Tomorrows later on. But yeah, that's a whole other story. So intelligent tool using therizinosaurs, maybe a no-go.
Yes. What else? What about some of the marine species? Do you think plesiosaurs, pliosaurs, mosasaurs could have been intelligent as modern whales?
I think some of the more extremely derived pliosaurs, like the polycotilids, and these were things that had like ultra mobile wing-like fins that were very long. they had forward-facing eyes, and they had like short, or in some cases weirdly like almost heron or stork-like thin snouts. But they had forward-facing eyes. They're huge eyes. So I always remember this weird eyes and the weird look that Lake Baikal seas have in the present day. They have these like big gray alien type eyes. So these seem to be really like visually prominent predators. Certainly eyesight was really important for them. They were not like giant sea monster size. They were not like chronosaurs or something, but they seem to be more small to medium sized and very active and very mobile, and they were almost certainly endothermic at that level. So something was going on with those guys. I mean, if you're looking for ancient marines to exhibit and perform for shows in a cruel marine park, I think those polycotyllids would be your first choice. The other ones, I think, like they're magnificent, but they're so locked into just a lizard eat lizard existence, or plesiosaur eat plesiosaur, or also sometimes eat a lizard. You know what I'm saying? The lineages are very complicated. They're so committed to a macro-predatory existence that it doesn't seem like they could do much.
You mean the mosasaurs?
The mosasaurs especially, I mean, they're just like eating machines.
There were the smaller, more agile types that probably lived a lot like sharks.
Or yeah, some maybe river-dwelling species like Plotosaurus, which apparently had specializations for estuarine habits, but no one can really tell with these fossils. But yeah, towards the end of their era, mosasaurs also show specializations, but the whole polycotylid derivation is just extreme. And I think it's made all the more complicated by the fact that, okay, let's do a short deep dive into plesiosaur evolution. People used to think there were these long-legged ones, long neck ones, plesiosaurs, and then short neck, big head ones like chronosaurs or pliosaurs. And then you had the extra long-necked ones, the elasmosaurs, and that was it. But I think now we know that the evolution of these things was far more complicated, and much like sea snakes, there were different clades, but within those clades, the long neck or the short neck or the big head things were independently more closely related to each other than to separate. So it's all a big mess. And to make the picture more complicated, we are discovering stranger new body plans. So the polycotyllids are one such example. There was also something that looked like, I can't remember the species name, but it was fairly recent. It looked like a 19th century prehistoric engraving. So it had a long neck, but also like a crocodile-like long snout. So a totally new body plan. So a lot of things were going on there.
Serpentsuchops, that was the name. Wait,
yes.
I'm right now looking for a book in case you're wondering where I'm going.
Yeah, so that's the one, Serpentisuchops. And it's got, I think it's one of the coolest marine creatures. And, you know, I can really imagine something like that. Maybe they built these stone gardens underwater. Remember the pufferfish?
Yes, you mean from that one David Attenborough documentary?
Yeah, they built these like very elaborate underwater patterns to impress girls. So I can imagine something like that. Maybe they could be, because they're visually oriented, maybe they could even be color-based. So Imagine something like a polycotylid or a Serpentisuchops derivative sectioning a part of the shallow water and then picking up only white stones to make like white patterns, or maybe alternating heaps of dark stones and light colored stones. So they kind of make this kind of like Othello, that's the board game, or like even like a very crude chessboard like arrangement, and that just would be cool. And if that was ever real, that would be, I think it would get my intelligent species seal of approval, pun intended. And
another very interesting group of I think Cretaceous plesiosaurs, late Cretaceous, are the Aristonectines.
The deep divers.
Yeah, which show adaptations, they show filter feeding adaptation.
And they have huge eyes, right?
Yeah, and there's like some like speculate that if these things hadn't gone extinct, they could have become like the Mesozoic equivalent of baleen whales. I mean, just look at this reconstruction I'm gonna show you.
Yep. Oh yeah, so I'm looking at the head of a quote-unquote plesiosaur, but it's completely different because there is a long neck, but there's also a long tail. Also, the limbs are very long. In fact, I think both sets of limbs are as long as the body itself, and the head has hundreds of tiny teeth, and the eyes are very big, and they're set in the front and upward facing part of the skull. So like a really unique arrangement. I don't think we have anything like this today, because the filter feeders we do have use sonar and sound to navigate, but this is like a visually oriented filter feeder. Certainly they had an adaptation and a view of the world completely unlike anything before, or maybe even since. And I do remember reading something about these things being adapted to dive for very long times and to extreme depths. So
yes,
almost
it's thought that they probably sieved the mud on the ocean floor, because we actually have like trace fossils of that happening in places like Switzerland, where you can see that these streaks across the Jurassic sediments where these marine reptiles just plowed through the mud with their filter feeding teeth.
I mean, your part of Europe is so rich in marine fossils that I almost inevitably picture a bikini bottom from SpongeBob. So that's what most of Central Europe is.
That's basically what inspired the book I've written. In case anyone doesn't know yet, I've written a book.
Yep.
You can check it out on my website. It's a little children's story about such marine reptiles.
If your fans go to Patreon, will they also be able to read about it there?
It's not on my Patreon, but it's on manospondylus.com on the sidebar.
That's manospondylus.com. So there's that. And going back at these deep diving plesiosaurs, they also remind me of beaked whales. You know, those really freaky deep diving whales that
are like almost cryptids because they are seen so rarely.
Yeah, I mean, you got entire species of whales alive in the present day, by the way. If you don't know about this is going to blow your mind. But literally, they're these huge animals as long as a car, and some species are only known from like one weird skull we accidentally found at a fish market in Zanzibar or something. And in some others, there are actually more sightings of certain UFO creatures than these species. Like, you go to the Wikipedia pages for beaked whales, and for certain individual species, they have a sighting map. So it was only seen like 3 times in the last 50 years. And like one sighting is from the UK. I'm just making this up, but one is from like Scotland and the other is from New Zealand. It's insane. It's like a UFO sighting map. And by the way, if you want to learn more about that, just look deeper into my channel, because there's a huge video about their diversity there.
Do we want to conclude the late Cretaceous with that and go into the early Cretaceous?
Yes. I think we should drive the time machine and also take a little bio break, because the cucumbers I have been eating for the past half of the day just need to come out now. So I just need to go, and I'll be right back.
Okay, we're back.
So we're back. We have hydrated, urinated, defecated, vacated, and we are continuing with our mega discussion of intelligence emerging in the age of the dinosaurs. And we were the last time around, we were talking about ancient marine reptiles and the possibilities of them becoming intelligent. But I think now TK Sivgin has a wild card to share with me.
Yeah. Before we jump into the early Cretaceous, I just remembered there is one thing I really want to talk about. It's a book by a guy named Mike McGee, or apparently also Marty McGee.
Yeah.
It's titled Who Lies Sleeping? The Dinosaur Heritage and the Extinction of Man.
Okay.
This is not a work of fiction. It's not a spec Evo book. This guy is for real. This is some crackpot pseudoscientist who proposed that there actually was a civilization of dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous, like a proper industrialized one. And that they caused the extinction event through their environmental destruction. And I have yet to find an affordable copy, unfortunately. But from what I heard, it's like the guy has some amazing ideas. Like, for example, he proposes that all the strange heterosaurs you see at the end of the Cretaceous, like Parasaurolophus and such, that they were domesticated farm animals of these dinosauroids.
Makes sense.
And
Okay.
that they evolved their strange head crests, like those big nasal crests,
Mm-hmm.
as an adaptation to breathing in the toxic air produced by the dinosauroid industry.
Wow,
That's just amazing. It's that like this guy was having fun.
How does he explain the ceratopsians? I'm sure he has a theory for them
I
too.
don't know. I haven't been able to read the book. I've only found summaries and reviews of it, but it sounds so fascinating to read. Like, if anyone out there owns this book and wants to donate it to us so we can maybe make a video about it, please contact either me or Memo.
Yeah. I mean, mail it to TK Sivgin and we can have a discussion. If you happen to be such a wild follower that you have 2 copies, then send one over to TK Sivgin and send one over to me. If you don't have any copies of this book, you're still not getting off that easily. We are kindly repeating our urge, our plea to you to donate to our Patreons, because where else will you find rarefied discussion like this?
Yeah. Or maybe if you just find like a PDF online, send us a link.
Yeah. So there are ways of getting that too. Also hit us up. And this book seems to be written in 1995. So it's like the height of the Captain Planet style environmental. I wouldn't want to call it alarmism, but there was a certain kind of environmental panic that was endemic to the 1980s and the 1990s. And it looks like he projected the present day troubles of the present day to that age. And yeah, that's that.
Yeah. Also, it's just 2 years after Jurassic Park, and you see in the tagline here, more sensational than Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah, that's the book's marketing tagline. There's also another book, just a second. It's called Aliens, the Final Answer. And this is a crackpot. Yeah, this is a crackpot UFO book. I think it was written by a British guy. It's written by, I think the name of the guy is David Barclay. And the book is marketed as a UFO cosmology for the 21st century, written in 1996. So 1 year after the book you just described.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it on Amazon. It has Queen Elizabeth on the cover.
It has a reptilian humanoid on the cover, and it says, in a sequence of systematically argued and themed chapters, he shows how the seemingly fantastic theory relates to a new solution of the UFO mystery. And this book was all about, I remember reading a very big review about this in the British Focus magazine back in the day, and I can never forget it. Basically, this book theorizes that dinosaurs became intelligent, destroyed the planet, and caused the dinosaur extinction, but a group of them also managed to make it off the planet, much like the humans in Dougal Dixon's Man After Man. And actually now these guys are coming back, again, echoes of Dougal Dixon's Man After Man. These guys are coming back to their old planet, and that's why they're abducting people, because they just want to see what their old mammal pests have grown into.
Wait, so this book, when did it come out?
1996, 1 year
96.
after the book you described.
Because basically the Silurians in Doctor Who, that's the exact same plot, and I'm just wondering which one is older. And I think the Doctor Who Silurians, they are actually older than this. So he actually may have stolen the idea from Doctor Who. And also there was literally a Star Trek Voyager episode that also had the exact same plot. Like, they found an alien planet, and then they found out the aliens on this planet are actually related to humans distantly. And they run some bullshit analysis, and they come to the conclusion, their ancestors were heterosaurs.
And related to humans.
Yeah, I mean, related in a general sense, because they thought they were aliens.
Oh, okay. So at least they have like 4 DNA base pairs and everything.
Yeah, they found out, wait, they are from the same biosphere as us. And the fun thing about that episode is that these dinosauroids, they don't actually know that they come from Earth originally, and they have this belief they always existed on this planet, and now that they come into contact with humanity, it's like damaging their
integrity,
their religion, the religious beliefs, and they have this big Galileo-esque trial about science versus religion, and yeah.
Oh, that's the theme of another book which I'm gonna plug in. I think it's called the Farseer. Yeah, it's called the Quintaglio Ascension Trilogy, and it's spelled Quintaglio, Quintaglio Ascension Trilogy. It's written by Robert J. Sawyer. I think we also discussed him when considering the Neanderthals in our earlier episode. And this is about a race of intelligent tyrannosaurs who somehow were uplifted in the late Cretaceous period by unknown species, by unknown aliens, and transplanted to a moon of Jupiter or a Jupiter-like planet. And they created a society there. And so this series of books one is called The Farseer, one is called The Fossil Hunter, the other one is called The Foreigner. And in these three books, one of them is about a dinosaur version of Galileo or Copernicus. Fossil Hunter is about a dinosaur version of Darwin. And the last one is Foreigner, is about a dinosaur version of Freud. And so they replicate and thematically riff on all the advances that science has made in our society. But except in this case, the society is managed by intelligent tyrannosaurs. And it's just like, I really recommend. These books are really fun to read. They're very you can finish them in a day, especially in the summer. They make for some great holiday reading. So really recommend those.
There is also this YouTuber, Dino Diego, who I think made videos about each of these books.
Oh, I did not know about this.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He sometimes comments under my videos.
Okay, so hello to Dino Diego if you're following, and we have taken your recommendation of the Quintaglio Ascension to the heart.
I found this video 2 years ago exploring the Quintaglio Ascension trilogy. It's 1 hour and 41 minutes.
Actually, you know what? You could probably read the book in less time, but that's one thing I recently read an author complaining about, and I'm not going to name the author, but he was saying that nobody reads the books anymore, but they know the stories of the books because they watch YouTubers talking about their books. And so nobody actually buys the books, but thousands of people watch YouTube videos about even the most obscure books out there. So well, I think we may also be contributing to this melody. But yeah, this series is great. Like, one of the most interesting moments is their version of Freud, and actually the revelation they have there, it's not sexual, so it's not that much like Freud. But basically this species lays eggs, and for some reason the eggs are sacred, and in order to avoid overcrowding, they have this ritual in which newborn dinosaurs, basically right after they hatch, the parents ritualistically try to hunt them and eat their own kids, and the kids who cannot escape get eaten, so the population is managed. And they slowly realize how this creates psychosis in their society. So they have these the society is very rational and really advancing well, but every now and then they have these outbreaks of weird violence and these weird phobias they cannot face up to. And they in a weird way, there's the king of their world, and the kings come from this special lineage in which none of the children are eaten. So they grow up without fear, and they grow up without this aggression reflex. So that's that. And the creatures here are intelligent tyrannosaurs, which may connect to our time scale now, standing at the early Cretaceous, right? Because that's when tyrannosaur evolution really began to take off.
I mean, there were tyrannosauroids as far back as the Jurassic.
Yeah. But those intermediate forms, like the crested ones and stuff, are they early Cretaceous or late Jurassic?
Both, I think. You can find them in both time periods. Like Dilong, Paradoxus, and
Guanglong also comes to mind.
Guanglong, yes. I think those are I have to look it up with.
But those dinosaurs could also be potentially intelligent, if not civilization building, by the way.
You think? They're very archaic. This is lower. Okay, Dilong is lower Cretaceous. And Guanglong is late Jurassic, yeah.
There's also another species called Meilong, the famous sleeping dinosaur. And
yes, I think that's a troodontid.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, my mistake. My bad.
I mean, long just means dragon in Chinese. Cretaceous?
In the early Cretaceous, there are also some really weird and, once again, very popular but little understood theropods like Acrocanthosaurus, which was extremely successful.
Oh yeah, I loved that one. Like as a kid, there was this game, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, where you could basically build your own Jurassic Park and do better than the people in the movie.
Uh-huh.
And through that game, I actually learned about Acrocanthosaurus, and yeah, I loved it. This was one of my favorite dinosaurs. It had a really cool design in the game.
Another bit of Acrocanthosaurus lore it comes from Louis Ray's book. It was called Field Guide to Dinosaurs. Wait, I need to look that up. Just a second. Louis Ray, of course, is a really, really talented and very revolutionary dinosaur artist. He's known for his paintings of very colorful dinosaurs, and Spanish-Mexican artist and illustrator, and he has one book.
Yeah, Louis Ray. But I think, yeah, Field Guide to Dinosaurs sounds like it could be that.
Okay, let's look it up. Just a second. Yeah, it's called Field Guide to Dinosaurs, the essential handbook for travelers in the Mesozoic. And they give you really nice and vibrant illustrations of almost all dinosaurs you can expect. But in the copy, there are also these little details about how they live. And since the suspension of disbelief in this book is about, well, it really poses itself as a genuine time travel book. So in the section about Acrocanthosaurus, it is hinted that Acrocanthosaurus was poisonous, not even venomous, and it was an obligate scavenger. And
what the hell?
Its sail was infected by green bacteria that give its green color, and it's almost like septic to approach. So it's kind of like cast as a poison/plague elemental, which is extremely interesting. So, and the whole book is like that. Like, I think Scipionyx, there's a detail about Scipionyx, which is this little understood small dinosaur once again. But in the book, they say these dinosaurs lay one big egg, and then like 10 babies hatch out of this one big egg, and they can reproduce parthenogenetically. And so like that is like the rat dinosaur that reproduces really fast and infects everywhere. So those are two of the incredible things in that book.
Okay, but like, is the author open about this being completely speculative?
They are
okay,
very
like,
open
because
about this. And
do they say what they base it off, or is it just vibes?
I think it's just vibes, but a lot of these things do refer to real life incidents too. I mean, the parthenogenetic reproduction, I think it's a hat tip to Jurassic Park with the frog
but is
DNA.
there any animal that lays one egg and then like 10 individuals hatch out of the same egg?
Maybe, I'm sure some fish
like
do it. I'm sure some fish do it because they're
but not reptiles.
Degenerate, but
not reptiles, not tetrapods.
No, certainly not. I mean, the closest I can get to this are some geckos, which glue their eggs together in this one big ball of egg masses, and they calcify, so it really looks like something out of an Aliens movie. And these are like normal geckos, by the way, but they layer their eggs together and they dry that way, so it's a big mass of eggs that looks like one thing, but it's not. But that's that.
Okay.
Speaking of the early Cretaceous, the famous Utah raptor also lived during that age, and that's also another candidate I see many people trotting out for an intelligent dinosaur candidate.
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
I know Utahraptor is almost a bit too brutish. Like, people tend to think Utahraptor was like the real life version of the Jurassic Park raptors, but it was actually more than that. Like, this thing was massive for a raptor, like polar bear sized, I think, or even polar bear weight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a dromaeosaur trying to be a carnosaur again.
Yeah, we have the skull too, and it's very boxy and heavy.
Yeah. So it's a bit too like brutish to be, this like nimble, intelligent type that people usually think of.
Yeah, it would certainly have been a nightmarish animal to encounter. But surprisingly, do you know why it went extinct?
Because of Acrocanthosaurus.
Yes, exactly. In the Greg Paul Encyclopedia, it says that its extinction coincided with the arrival of Acrocanthosaurus. So this supposed like weird, toxic, brainless scavenger carnosaur was actually more efficient than this supposed super smart ultra mega raptor dinosaur.
Yeah.
But actually,
I'm always skeptical of like explanations like that. Okay, this species died out because it couldn't compete with that species, because you cannot actually prove that. Oftentimes it's just like correlation, but without proving causation.
Yeah.
Like when people say that terror birds went extinct because North and South America connected, and now the saber-toothed cats could come to South America. No, the terror birds were already in decline before that. And some, like Titanis, actually managed to invade North America.
Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible either, but I agree. I mean, and to his credit, Greg Paul says its extinction coincided with the arrival of this thing. So he's careful not to draw that link too directly.
But there is, do you know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
There's this one like, because of the implication.
Yeah. Well, in earlier editions of the Dinosaur Guide, which we were discussing, Greg Paul's very famous Princeton Encyclopedia, in earlier editions, he outright says that main enemy of Astrodon, or like, the main enemy of this species was Allosaurus or something like that, which was, once again, it sounded very cool, but for science writing, it leaves a bit to be desired.
Yeah, it is. I get why he was doing that, because again, this is a field guide, so you are tempted to write it as if you're writing about animals that are still alive today, to give it that feel.
To his credit, Greg Paul at least tries to like connect disparate species into ecosystems, which actually not many books did before this field guide came out. So I guess you could credit him for that.
I'm just trying to look up where he talks about Utahraptor, because I can't find the entry. But right. You can keep talking.
All right. Well, look, I mean, before the Gregory Paul field guides came out, by the way, this is going to be confusing because the Louis Ray book we just spoke about was also called A Field Guide to Dinosaurs, but heck, you get the idea. Like, they're all very interesting. And before Greg Paul's Princeton field guide, there were not many books trying to like conceptualize dinosaur diversity in terms of ecosystems. It was always like, okay, there's the Cretaceous, there's the Jurassic, there's the Triassic, and Triassic dinosaurs didn't meet Cretaceous dinosaurs, but that was that. And then it was all like Pokemon. But I think those books are very valuable because they list which animal lives together with which, and I think it really gets the popular reader to think in a new way. So that is that. By the way, TK is still looking for the...
Yeah, I found it, but he actually didn't illustrate it, which I find surprising. And and he didn't write down that note that you mentioned about it going extinct at the same time as Acrocanthosaurus arrived.
Well, maybe somebody corrected him from the last edition. By the way, it's very important to buy, although it's really painful for your wallet, it's really important to buy multiple editions of certain books, especially encyclopedias, as they come out, because, well, a lot changes. Things get omitted and things get added in, So there's a trick, there's a tip from us to you. And what else lived in the early Cretaceous? Oh my God!
I mean, you still had ichthyosaurs, but they were slowly going extinct. You had a bunch of pterosaurs.
This crazy ceratopsian, Udanoceratops. I think it was an early Cretaceous form.
Udanoceratops, yeah, could be. Yeah, you had like Psittacosaurus, I think. Yeah, Psittacosaurus lived in the early Cretaceous.
Do you think any chance of intelligent potential for Psittacosaurs? Because they were very social. That's very important.
That is true. Like, there is this amazing fossil of like a large individual that died together with a bunch of babies.
It always makes me cry.
Yeah, and then they analyzed the bigger one to see if that actually was the mother. And they found out that big one was not actually grown enough yet to be sexually mature. So they think that this was actually the older sister looking out for her younger brothers.
Or maybe just a conspecific. But I mean, regardless of whether that was a sister, cousin, or a mother, it really shows something very warm to our hearts. I mean, the very fact that a grown-up shelters children, it's very poignant. And I think it's a clear case that these animals were very social. Maybe the whole ceratopsian lineage was social to begin with. So that's why all those weird crests and horns evolved in later lineages, and that's why they could adapt into these like big herd-dwelling herbivorous lineages. And there's just something very noble about them. Like, so these were dinosaurs that effectively cared for each other in active life, and maybe that was something that gave them their edge in success. And if you were to travel in the past, ceratopsians would maybe stand out to you not because of their horns and everything, but because they like kind of watch out for each other. And when you got groups of animals living together, you also have the matter of communication. And, you know, there's like infinite room for speculation in how these things could talk with each other. Almost smart like parrots. And despite being herbivorous, maybe they would have different sounds and calls for different predators or different risks. Maybe different commands for like make a circle formation or run this way, run that way. I mean, it's just like ceratopsians are really, they deserve more love for their social habits.
They look so weird, right? If Triceratops wasn't real and you showed a drawing to someone, they would think this was like made up by some deranged sci-fi artist.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, the whole social angle is really intriguing for me. And
yeah, like they could have easily lived in this like chipmunk or meerkat societies that you imagined earlier.
Especially psittacosaurs.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm even thinking about like the larger species maybe having artificial banners or something, like not like a flag, but it would be just very cool where each herd would have like a flag bearer, which would be this one individual carrying a tree post or something, like a dead tree or like some other object to mark it out. And anyways.
Interesting. The thing is about like the very big ceratopsians at the end of the Cretaceous. They had some of the smallest brain sizes of dinosaurs compared to their body mass.
Don't say that, man. You're making me sad now.
I mean, just there is a very interesting graph of like the EQ of different animal species, and you see Triceratops on that. Like the EQ is even lower than like a chicken.
Well, chickens are pretty smart, so you never know.
If they were so smart, then why do they end up on my plate all the time?
Well, maybe they're aiming for the long game, you know? Occasionally having one on your plate ensures that they'll stick around with us for billions of years to come.
But that's not a desirable existence in our slaughterhouses.
Yeah, but truth be told, like there are these people, you can see them on Instagram and stuff. There are these people who like rescue a chick and raise it like they would raise a cat or a dog. And the chicken is super smart. I think Mark Whitten and his wife have something like that going on. The chicken is super smart. He knows individuals. He comes when he's cold. He's got like weird pet peeves.
Do you think chickens only appear so stupid because the way they are usually raised like stunts their social growth?
Absolutely. I mean,
you know, like keeping a human in a zoo instead of like sending him to school.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of domesticated animals, like pigs, come to mind, for example. They're very smart. So yeah, if you raise a creature under factory farm conditions, it's not gonna like live out to its full potential, to say the least. I'm always reminded of this one YouTube video where there's this garden ornament. It's like a steel, like it's like a metal ball that can rotate in a frame. It's like this weird American folk art kind of thing. Don't ask why. And these people have a pet chicken, which is like habituated, so it's like a member of the family. And as soon as somebody touches this metal globe, the chicken gets so freaking jealous. She attacks the person and she just really takes it out on the steel ball too. She really hates that ball for some reason. And those weird quirks like that with bird behavior, I mean, they don't have much brains, but you know, they got a character at least. So
there is this book called Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith. It's about animal psychology, mostly about octopuses, but there was like one thing I learned from the book that really fucked with my mind. See, like placental mammals like us, we have a corpus callosum, which connects the left and the right side of the brain.
Yep.
And other animals, they don't have that, or they have it in a weakened form.
Mm-hmm.
And the consequence of that is apparently that many animals, especially birds,
Mm-hmm.
basically have two brains inside one mind, or like
Oh,
two minds inside a single head. And you know how they figured that out?
how?
Like this was an experiment they did on pigeons. They showed, like, they covered one eye of the pigeon and showed the free eye something. Then they covered that eye and showed the other, and then looked if the pigeon remembered the thing with the other eye, and it could not.
Oh.
So basically, only the two brain halves could not communicate with each other's memories.
Maybe it pretended to not remember because it didn't want to work like that fable of talking monkeys who don't speak because...
but no, because it usually gets like rewarded with food, if it does something right. No, but...
Well.
And anyway, that's apparently the reason why chickens always bob with their head around in these like very frantic ways, so that both brain halves get a look at something.
That's fantastic. And I think birds have a lot of quirks like that. I wonder if it's an ancestral thing that maybe dinosaurs would have also had, or maybe it's a side effect of just compressing so much brain tissue into a small size, and maybe they just had to like factor in those weird shortcuts there. I don't know.
Yeah, but isn't it crazy to think about that most animals basically have like split personality disorder?
Oh yeah. So actually,
like
this
you can actually achieve the same effect in humans if you sever
lobotomy.
No, it's not lobotomy. That sometimes we sever the corpus callosum as like a treatment for schizophrenia, and it actually works in treating schizophrenia, but it results in the same effect as in the pigeons. That if you show one eye something, the other half won't remember.
We are talking about lobotomy, right?
It's not the same as lobotomy, because in lobotomy you actually remove a part of the brain.
No. Oh, wait, it is lobotomy. It's when they put a needle through the nose or the eye.
The corpus callosum is at the back of the brain.
Okay, so wait, in humans there's something similar, but it has a darker history.
I mean, both things are brain surgery, but it's not the same procedure.
Yeah. So like it's gonna be a side discussion, but the one I'm talking about was very popular in the States in the 1950s.
Yeah, and that one is horrible. I think that has become illegal, I think.
Yeah.
Because it literally was just people like probing around in your brain, not even knowing what they're poking, and then just like cutting a part of the brain out. It's like very barbaric. And they mostly did this to women with mental disorders so that they would become more docile, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's like horrible and sexist and pseudoscience basically, and the procedure I'm talking about is apparently a proven method to cure schizophrenia, to sever the corpus callosum. And the side effect, again, is that you basically have a split brain after that.
And to close the Stargate to the world of spirits. But I guess that's what it takes sometimes. Oh man, any other early Cretaceous candidates? By the way, it's been over an hour, and just goes to show how eminently rewarding it is to bounce ideas with you, and how much crazy stuff there was in the Mesozoic. I'm humbly suggesting us to wrap this up soon, and then we can tackle the Jurassic period and the Triassic period in the next episode. I am noticing a lot of you viewers are really enjoying these streams, so thank you so much. And like these 3 episodes we've done, they've gotten comments, and like I'm looking, because I got the backstage access, I'm looking at the analytics, and these gain up viewers so much faster than many videos before. So thank you so much for listening. And I know a lot of you are listening and sketching these ideas and stuff. So if you make drawings or write something about this, please let us know. We're always very happy to inspire others. In fact, that's the whole reason why we are doing this thing. So that is that. Any sapiens candidates in the early Cretaceous?
Monotremes, obviously. No. I mean, on that topic, there was this recent discovery that I think early Cretaceous Australia really was a monotreme world.
Really?
Like they found a bunch of new species, and they figured that the entire mammal fauna of Australia at one point really was dominated by monotremes like the platypus and the echidna, and only later did it become gradually more marsupial, and that's fascinating.
And were dinosaurs present in Australia back then, or?
Yeah. Dinosaurs always existed in Australia. Yeah.
I'm always imagining about, like, imagine there must have been something like Tasmania or New Zealand, around close to Australia in those times. And then that place would have been like maybe full-on monotreme skull island with like actual megafaunal forms or stuff like that.
Oh, I hope we find something like that. Yeah. The island ecologies that must have existed during these times, like we cannot even imagine all the possibilities.
Flightless pterosaurs. I think we'll get to those in the Jurassic period because there are some very interesting pterosaur species living back then.
Let's jump into the Jurassic, and like you said, there is this species Kungpengopterus, which is I think from China.
Yep.
They found that it was a pterosaur with an opposable thumb.
Yeah, and it was really quote unquote marketed that way, like flying reptile with opposable thumb.
Yeah, they called it the monkey dactyl.
Yeah, but it looks like a lot of pterosaurs actually had that feature, it seems like.
Could be, I'm not sure. I remember I read the other Greg Paul book, the Field Guide to Pterosaurs, and there he says that this opposable thumb thing that may just be an artifact of preservation, which would not be unprecedented because until like the 1960s, many people thought that these small ornithopod type dinosaurs like Hypsilophodon, that they actually lived in trees because they thought the foot looked like that of a perching bird, and that they opposed like their first toe to grasp at tree trunks and branches, and that basically just turned out to be wrong. Like these were running animals, they couldn't grab shit with their feet.
The counterfactual, they could still have climbed like goats.
Or tree kangaroos. That is true. And there is at least one species of I think heterodontosaur called Manidens that actually did have that opposing first toe. That one probably did live on trees. But anyway, we were talking about pterosaurs.
Yeah. So, I mean, assuming that this opposable thumb thing was real, it's not outside the realm of possibility. I mean, I can really see like something like that sitting in a tree and weaving together a basket, or maybe weaving together a nest. I mean, birds weave very complex nests without having opposable fingers. They use their beaks to tie leaves together. So something like this is really possible. Imagine like you go to the past and there are these enormous like Ewok house like nests hanging from the trees, but they just look like giant stockings basically. But they've been woven together by these things, and it's something I would have liked to exist. And of course, being flying animals, they would be still reasonably active and intelligent. They would probably have some sort of parental care and maybe even a sort of hierarchic society, because a lot of those species also had crests, which at least indicate kin recognition and maybe even hierarchies. So
those with small crests, they invented monster trucks to compensate.
maybe who knows. Maybe they wove the like longest. Maybe they could even invent fashion that way. You see a lot of recordings with like budgies tearing strips of paper and tucking them under their wings to look more fancy. And they kind of like walk around serving cunt like that. I think that's adorable.
Did you just say serving cunt?
Yes,
Is that an expression?
It is an expression. It means,
I don't think I heard that before.
No, it like in Gen Z parlance, it means, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it means like serving, an attitude and beauty and sexiness. So they're like serving it, dishing it out. So
I don't know, serving cunt sounds more like you're prostituting yourself.
No, believe me, it's not. I have looked this up. Do look it up. But yeah,
you did your research on these things, huh?
Yeah. And those budgies are definitely like 100% serving. That's even abbreviated these days. They just call it serving. You're serving, and then everybody knows what's on the menu. Yeah.
For real. But I'm only born in 98, and this new Gen Z stuff, it's already making me feel like a grandpa.
Time and tide wait for no man. I mean, imagine how I must be feeling.
We are the dinosauroids.
Yes.
So we have intelligent pterosaurs, maybe like Manidens. Something that derived from Manidens would be cute, like these little, like heterodontosaurs were these little bipedal ornithischians that, interestingly, they were probably completely covered in like porcupine-like spikes.
Yep.
And yeah, maybe they also lived in these little Ewok villages. That would be cute.
Yeah, maybe they're like, once again, they're burrowing in the ground and the pterosaurs are up in the trees. This has become a recurring pattern.
Yeah, but like I said, Manidens probably was a tree-living species because of the shape of the foot. But you did have like ground-living ornithischians too, like nanosaurs that probably did live in burrows.
Imagine like a two-species society, some like, what was it called? Serena-like society with equal parts shared by the Manidens ornithopods and the Kupengopterus pterosaurs. That would be a fantastic universe to
and probably
develop.
also some like pseudo like proto-bird like Archaeopteryx living somewhere in between.
Yeah, probably. So much to explore there.
It's a cute world building idea. I hope someone illustrates that. Yes.
Speaking of illustration, I almost forgot, but over 10 years ago, I illustrated an entire series of plausible intelligent dinosaurs. There were a lot of stuff. I mean, there was an intelligent oviraptorosaur. There was an intelligent enantiornithine bird, which looked like a human weirdly. There were the usual dinosauroids, which me and Simon Roy later went on to develop. There was an intelligent flightless pterosaur, which had like a big head and long fingers. It looked like one of the Martian creatures imagined by H.G. Wells. There was even like, this was a joke, but there was even a giant intelligent sauropod.
Yeah, I wanted to talk with you about that. Yeah. Do you think we can develop that as an idea? Like, because sauropods, I know they had like these very small brain sizes, but I could imagine like some of the smaller sauropods that were living in groups, at least developing some degree of social intelligence, like elephants.
I think when we go deeper in time and study the late Triassic, there's a really big potential there with things like plateosaurids and stuff like that. But even the giant ones, and they're like titans or kaiju, and at those sizes, you don't need to build stuff. But just as a thought exercise, I imagined my intelligent sauropods with like a long tongue that could at least, pick up objects, and like even something as simple as, and it's always weird to me why this doesn't exist in nature, but even something as simple as, imagine this intelligent sauropod. It's not huge, but it's not tiny either. It's like a medium size, like 10 meters, 13 meters, something. Imagine all it does to mark its territory is pick up a big branch and just whack it against trees. So that would be something like stack, like this big noise echoing, I don't know, just manipulating the environment, even in basic terms like that. It would, if that thing was real, it would be like a legendary creature. So there is that, I think.
Another thing I always found interesting is like, diplodocid dinosaurs, they have these very long tails that end in this very thin whip-like organ. And general idea is that these really were used like whips, and that they could even like throw them fast enough to break the sound barrier to produce like an intimidating pang sound. But an idea that always intrigued me is that I think they even featured this in Walking with Dinosaurs. The idea that when these things walked in groups, they just reached out with their tail tips to the other members of the herd just to keep in contact.
That's a far more plausible idea. And the whole whiplash hypersonic thing, a human could like punch really hard, and you don't see that so it's very plausible. You look at cats actually, when they're like enjoying each other's company, they stroke each other with their tails. So it could be something really useful for herd cohesion. And once again, like I always base my theories of human-like intelligence on sociality. So something like that is definitely plausible.
Yeah, I know. I just like the idea of sauropods using their tails, kind of like elephants use their trunks.
I'm now thinking about something like a Hajj-like ritual for these sauropods. And imagine there's this place they're born in, and there are either these gigantic trees or this one particular stone or something there. And when they go back there to mate and lay eggs, they go around this natural artifact and they just touch it with their tails, brush their tails against it as a kind of like social homecoming ritual. And yeah, that's just really interesting to picture.
Or simply marking a territory, or maybe like spreading pheromones so that young hatchlings know the way to the herd.
Yeah, if that's like a habitual thing, that would be twice as interesting. I don't think many dinosaurs were that pheromone dependent. Although sauropods have these huge nasal passages, so you never know. So the tails could be like a scent marker thing, and much like ants also live that way. So like worker ants go all over the place, and if they find something and they bring it back to the nest, they lay down a trace of scent that says, follow this, there's food here. And then other ants pick up that scent and go there. If they still find food, they do the same thing. So the link is actually reinforced. And that's how like the emergent mind of the ants begins to work. So maybe even something like that. I don't know.
You keep returning to like use social ideas, I notice.
I mean, not usual sociality, but like, let's just say in this case, a very advanced form of scent marking. That's...
Yeah, but you just gave me a horrible idea. Like, imagine all the sauropods of the Triassic, they were just like worker drones in like a hive system, and there existed like one queen sauropod that was like some Godzilla-sized monstrosity lying somewhere in a deep cave.
I was just listening to Blue Oyster Cult Godzilla song last night, and that's a really nice song. Got a line that says, history shows again and again how nature shows up the folly of man. Godzilla. Yeah, I love that song.
That song is great. They even used it in one of the movies.
Yeah, and Serj Tankian of System of a Down is singing that. So yeah, that's really cool. Oh, well, on that note, I must sadly state that I am pressed for time now. And shall we now say goodbye to our time travel to return in the next episode? And we can pick up from the Jurassic again?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, like Jurassic, Triassic, and maybe Permian.
Yeah, we'll see how far the time machine goes.
Like ultimately we will end up at like the creation of the Earth.
Yeah, Hadean epoch.
Yeah, the Hadean, the bacteria Atlantis.
Yeah. Now, everybody listening, please let us know which one was your favorite concept in this episode. And look, I'm not going to repeat the call out for monetary support again, but here's another idea. If you cannot support us monetarily, what you can do is a lot of you Zoomers who use words like serving cunt are also active on places like Discord, which I cannot for the life of me navigate. So at least spread our podcast, tell about us to your friends and, spread the gospel, so to speak. So we grow. And these videos are going really great. I'm really so happy to hang out with you. It doesn't feel like work at all. So yeah, I'm very happy. Any closing remarks, my friend?
In the comments, please write down speculations for a civilization of intelligent Mesozoic mammals.
Yep.
Because we haven't talked about that here, so maybe you guys can.
Yep. And if we missed anything, also point us towards that and we can always backtrack. So from my end, this was that. Thank you, everybody.
See you. Bye.
Bye. Week 4. Still going deeper and deeper, and deep time shows no ending. Food's already run out. Water runs out in a week. Air runs out in 2 weeks. But we still keep going. And welcome again to the CMTK podcast, Deep Time Silurian Hypothesis Extravaganza, where myself, CM Kosemen, and my good friend TK Sivgin study every epoch in geological history and talk about what human-like species could have evolved from the animals that were living back then. And as you heard in the beginning intro skit right now, we are going deeper and deeper into deep time. This is the 4th episode of a long series, and we don't know how much longer it will last because there's just so many interesting animal groups to talk about. And that was a skit, so we're not really running out of air, but it would also help if you could contribute to our Patreon accounts. The links are in the video description and in the pinned comment. Really, this series is getting really popular these days. It's outperforming many other videos on this channel. So if you're happy with what you're listening, I guess it's only fair you donate at least $1 a month on Patreon. And you know what? Here's the deal. Imagine you donate to us now and 2 months later, you got a change in your situation. You can easily cancel too. So there's no obligation. Yeah, for us it really makes a difference. So please consider that. And with that out of the way, where were we? What time were we in, TK, when we last left off?
Well, our DeLorean got crushed by a brontosaurus, so I'm guessing we were stuck in the Jurassic period.
Yes, we were studying the age of the dinosaurs and considering potentially intelligent dinosaur lineages. And you have to understand, the age of the dinosaurs is a long one. You know, even the Cretaceous period, which was only one of the 3 epochs that dinosaurs lived in, even that alone is longer than the added complexity, everything that came afterwards. So just think about it in that perspective. And it's a vast era. And I think, as you said, we were just on the boundary between the early Jurassic or the mid-Jurassic. And what do we have on our plate in those days?
Well, some of the stupidest dinosaurs you'll ever know, like Stegosaurus.
Yeah, the very famous, but it might have changed if it had 2 brains. That was the outdated hypothesis that said, this animal...
For context, if people don't know, like there was a time period where it was thought that Stegosaurus and even, I think, dinosaurs in general had 2 brains.
Mm-hmm.
Because dinosaurs have a cavity in their hip bones called the sacral plexus.
Yep.
And this was an old idea, well, not really suggested by Marsh, but he kind of implied it, like he never outrightly said it, but he implied it, that there was like a big nerve center there that helped with moving the hind legs, because the main brain in the head was just too small to get that job done.
Mm-hmm.
And today this idea is seen as very unlikely, because because now we know a lot more about how reptile brains work and how they actually work very well at smaller sizes compared to mammal brains. And also modern birds have that same cavity there in their hip bones, but they don't have a second brain there. They have just a glycogen storage there, so like a sugar.
So just weird fatty sugary molecules. So there's still hope for Stegosaurus, perhaps, as an intelligent species, or maybe not.
Yeah. What was that name? Like Isaberisora, or like we talked about in the last episode?
Just to recap, there is this dinosaur that was related to Stegosaurus, these things change every week, so maybe they'll make another assessment. But there's this dinosaur that, imagine a Stegosaurus with a longer body, and it walks on 2 legs, not 4, and it doesn't have any back plates. But that's basically Isaberisora. And although it could be something else, I think most research classifies it as a early offshoot of the Stegosaur lineage. So there is that. It was a very, very generalist herbivorous form with 2 legs and grasping hands. So once again, maybe something suitable at least for building nests and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I always wondered what to do, like these small bipedal herbivorous dinosaurs. What did they use their hands for?
Yeah,
because they never got like vestigial hands like the theropods, and they always kept like the full number of fingers on there too. So they have been clearly using their hands for something.
Yeah, and the arm bones are very robust. One hypothesis argues that theropods reduced them because they kept biting each other's arms off. And
that's a bit of a ridiculous hypothesis. I don't actually believe that.
Well, you say that, but there's one Dilophosaurus fossil with very well preserved arms, and fossil evidence shows that this thing had like 5 fractures and its arm was crushed. So these things were biting each other's arms and hands, maybe among different individuals in the same species. So that could have selected for smaller arms, perhaps.
Yeah, but I think the main factor is simply this horizontality of the theropod bow plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the first thing that always came into contact with like an object or with food was the head and not the arms. So the head was always basically favored in interacting with the environment, and this made the arms just only secondary features. Let's say it like that.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and this would have lent very well to them becoming vestigial in some lineages. There were obviously theropods with very strong muscular arms, like Allosaurus or the Spinosaurids.
Or the Megaraptorans.
Exactly, yeah.
A lot of these animals, especially Megaraptorans, we still clearly don't understand what they were like. And sometimes the Megaraptors get classified as literally like smaller tyrannosaurs with really huge arms and something like that. But
like a meme.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the latest consensus on Megaraptorans, if I may ask?
I don't think there is really a consensus. I mean, if you were to ask Darren Naish, he would say they are like early tyrannosauroids.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he says himself that his opinion is a bit controversial.
Mm-hmm.
And many others, I think, classify them either as just like basal coelurosaurs that survived until the Cretaceous.
Yep.
Or that they are like some offshoot of the earlier carnosaurs, which, if you don't know, carnosaurs today are just a group that encompasses megalosauroids and allosauroids.
Okay, once carnosaurs used to be a wastebasket taxon.
Yes, exactly.
A little bit like the ornithopods are still today. But anyways, back to the matter at hand. Any contenders for intelligent dinosaurs in those ages?
Well, we already talked about the late Jurassic, like the early Jurassic. That's actually kind of a mysterious time. There are like not many fossil deposits from that time. Interesting.
And
which is
there's a big fossil gap there, right?
Yeah, especially in the middle Jurassic too, which is a bit frustrating because most cladistic analyses would suggest that like a lot of important points in dinosaur evolution happened exactly at that time, like the origin of birds, for example.
Yep. Well, going back to the Silurian hypothesis, the lack of clear fossils from that huge era all around the world, it shows us how easily things could disappear. And let us play the game assuming we have to have an intelligent species then. And what would your closest contender be?
Well, it's generic, but probably some kind of theropod.
Just
like we keep mentioning this novel, but it keeps being relevant, Evolution by Stephen Baxter, where he imagines like this Ornitholestes civilization that only made tools and dwellings out of wood, and so nothing of their culture was ever preserved.
I'm
imagining something like that. Yes, what did you say?
I was researching about this the other day, and I remembered Wayne Douglas Barlow, the very famous speculative evolution god artist, once had a series of drawings where he sketched out these intelligent dinosaurs known as the Mutata, M-U-T-A-T-A. Yeah.
Mutata,
I'm looking at Mutata Barlow, and they seem to be Ornitholestes descendants too. And it comes from a dinosaur book. I think it might be Ray Bradbury Presents Dinosaur World or some fiction, some sort of sci-fi collection like that.
Mutata. Darren Naish tweeted about this once. I'm trying to look at it. Or no, wait.
So in this book, you got pictures of.
Okay, wait. So apparently, it's like it's a Ray Bradbury story. You were correct. Apparently, it's like a spin-off of A Sound of Thunder. You know that story?
Enlighten me, please. I don't think I do.
It's this story where like a time traveler like goes back to the Jurassic and accidentally steps on a butterfly, and then he comes back to his own time, and it changed history so much that he now lives in a dystopian dictatorship.
Okay. Well,
literally about like butterfly effect taken literally.
Yeah.
And I guess the story is called simply Dinosaur Planet.
Yeah, very creative name.
Yeah, which I don't know if it was written by Bradbury or if it's just supposed to take place in the same universe. But yeah, the sketches are very interesting by Barlow.
I mean,
it looks like it could be a Coelurosaur. It could really be anything. It looks like a very generic 90s dinosaur.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 1990s style dinosaur. Once again, it's really beautifully rendered. It looks like a generic, almost like an ornithomimus type of thing. It's got long arms with 3 digits and grasping hands. It's got like a thinnish neck and maybe toothless beak, but actually there's like a big dome over its skull, so you kind of see its brainier. It almost looks like one of those parrots without feathers. And once again, like this could have been, I haven't read the book. It may not be very well scientifically argued, but this thing, the drawing is so nice and lifelike by Wayne Barlow that it kind of puts a suspension of disbelief effect over the whole thing. And to make the thing even more believable, there next to it there's this illustration of a mutata nest, which is like this long half egg shaped mud building with female dinosaurs hatching eggs upstairs and then warriors sleeping downstairs. And they have got very plausible looking weapons. So they have something like a spear that the animal grips. And maybe because these things don't have very strong shoulders like primates do, there are actually metal balls near the grips that are like tennis ball size. So it has extra weight at the handle. So when the thing pushes it, the weight of the balls kind of helps drive the blade forward. So I mean all of those details really make this thing more believable. But maybe that could be a likeness of the speculative mid-Jurassic Ornitholestes derivative we were talking about.
Okay, 2 points. First, like many people have said in the comments, it would be great if we had like pictures included in the podcast. And just so you know, I am planning in the future to put all of these episodes together into one mega video.
Yes.
Where I will put relevant pictures in the timeline.
And I will include this image in the video background picture, so at least you'll be able to see that.
Yeah. First, okay, that's the first point. Second, did you know that Wayne Barlow also illustrated the Yilane?
Oh yes, the West of Eden trilogy.
If somebody doesn't know, there is this. I think it is a trilogy of books. I think it's like 5 books, anyway, called West of Eden, which it takes place in a universe where the asteroid never hit Earth, and so evolved a species of intelligent mosasaur that competes with a race of humans that evolved from New World monkeys in this world.
Yep.
And his drawing. Wait, I have it here somewhere. Wait.
I have the 3 books from that series. The one is called West of Eden, which I think is a silly name because it's a riff off East of Eden, which is a John Steinbeck story. And after West of Eden, there is, I think it was called Return to Eden. What? Just a second. Wait, I need to look this up. West of Eden. Yeah, a series of novels by Harry Harrison. And the picture that Barlow painted for this series, I remember it too. It was very, very touching. So we are looking at like a kneeling figure in a nuclear sunset. It looks like a human being, but when you get closer, it's actually a lizard man. And if you study the details, it has a kind of spear, but the spear has actually been created out of like a really elongated crab, basically. So a caveat in this book is that these Yilane creatures use biotechnology. So they got guns, but they're actually portable monitor lizards that spit poisonous spikes. They have like half-track armored personnel carriers, but they're actually genetically modified therizinosaurs with 8 legs, which I always thought was the most ridiculous thing in the whole book.
And also like ichthyosaur submarines, even though ichthyosaurs already were extinct by the Cretaceous.
But they got some more credible creations too. Like one of their biological tool beasts is they just call them cloaks, and they're these huge mollusks that wrap themselves around the cold-blooded Yilane bodies, and they just make them warmer. So there's that.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's such a creative world. And if you don't want to read the books, Dino Diego again, like he did like a whole video series where he summarizes everything that happens.
So there are 3 books in this series. One is called West of Eden, another one is called Winter in Eden, and a last one is called Return to Eden. And the first one starts out like a normal, quote unquote normal, warm-blooded human versus cold-blooded reptile story. And I remember the details about the Yilane language were really well thought out. The book actually has special characters referring to the body postures that the Yılane antagonists make when they're speaking, because in their language, body postures and like certain movements with the tail and arms, they're almost like dancing. They are part of the language. So in a weird way, these things get committed into the book. In a sad way, I mean, there's a whole like orphan trauma and revenge story. So like, look, if you want spoilers, I'm sorry, I don't care. But if you don't want spoilers, I don't care. But there's a human that gets captured by these reptilians, and actually the leader of the reptilians, it's a matriarchal society. The leader of the reptilians also rapes this guy in a very weird and uncomfortable scene.
Yeah,
and
that was something. When was this book written? Like, I know there is this like time where sci-fi got really weirdly horny.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time when there's also things like the gore series of books are also rising. Yeah, they were written a bit earlier, but it's called GOR, and you know what? I'm not even going to explain them, but they're super horny. But actually, this violation scene serves as a motive for the character's revenge, because then he escapes. The reptilian masters, actually they use him to lie. There's this one really evil reptilian character. Her name was Mavainte, I think. I can never forget. And she notices that humans can lie, and in a weird, I don't know how, but in a weird way, apparently the Yılane cannot lie because their language incorporates color changes and body movements, so they can't fake those. So they're always really truthful. Like, you can't even tell simple lies, which is very stupid. So the antagonist uses our lead character to lie for her, and she gains political power. And something happens. The lead character, his name is Kerik. He runs away, then he bands together with other humans, and they conduct this guerrilla warfare against the dinosaurs, and it's just like a bloodbath to the end. At the very end, they start burning down the city, and in another one of those weird twists.
They don't know what fire is. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
They don't know what fire is, and they like one of the lead characters says, "I will tell you something important now." There's a chemical reaction we have studied for a long time. It is called fire, and obviously, I mean, did these creatures not exist on Earth? Because even in nature, fires are a common occurrence. I think I know we took a big tangent here, but I guess that's what most of you listen to this channel for. In this book, I think they took the really alien trope a bit too far. So things like being completely unable to lie or not knowing what fire is, they're hard to believe. I mean, if something lives in the world, in the physical plane, you probably will know what fire is. So there's that.
Yeah.
And there's actually a very weird note about Yılane evolution. You mentioned it briefly, but would you want to go maybe deeper over that? Because you expect these things to be dinosaurs, but they're not.
Yeah, they are mosasaurs, which, as we discussed, were fully marine lizards that lived at the end of the Cretaceous. And yeah, it's a weird choice. Like, I mean, I guess, like, probably, I think the author's name was Harry Harrison. Very funny. I think he was probably inspired by like cetacean intelligence, so he chose a water-based species. But of course, it's weird that these mosasaurs would come onto land again and redevelop like fingers and toes and like become completely land-living animals again.
Yeah, I never bought that.
Yeah, I guess like when he was writing this in the 80s, I think it was still thought that mosasaurs could still crawl onto land to lay eggs.
Yeah, even then, I mean, it's like expecting a sea turtle to develop into ninja turtles, which is...
I mean, that would be a funny scenario. Like, why has nobody ever done like a turtle seed world?
I'm sure there's at least somebody working on like that, but... Yeah. Oh, anyways, that was the West of Eden series. It's a really nice series of books, so strongly recommended. So... And I think we're done with the Jurassic, are we?
Yes, unless you want to talk about like some non-dinosaur dinosaur group. Like I remember in one episode you joked about like a mammal civilization hidden somewhere in the Mesozoic.
I used to think about something like this, but in that instance, the mammals were descendants of Permian era prehistoric mammal-like reptiles. But yeah, something like that could crop up at any period, to be honest. I mean, the age of the dinosaurs was already very long, and there were a lot of mammal groups, a lot of phantom lineages, and it's not impossible for a digging, underground, warren-building pseudo-civilization to evolve out of whatever lived.
Yeah. Imagine at the end of the Triassic, some like part of Pangaea, like some Madagascar-sized island splits off from Pangaea and like travels so far that like dinosaurs cannot easily reach it anymore per water. And so like some lineage of synapsid or early mammals survives there, develops into megafauna. And I guess something like, vaguely human-like could develop on there. And I don't know, at some point in time they develop boats and then they explore the world and set up colonies.
Yeah, a more realistic version of the West of Eden series. By the way, speaking of which, a lot of mammals at that time still reproduced by laying eggs. So that's interesting, and it makes for some more interesting possibilities too.
Yes. Although I think it is controversial with how early viviparity evolved.
So you are saying that monotremes, which we know, quote unquote, primitive mammals, I mean, which also lay eggs, by the way, things like the platypus and the echidna. So those things are not representative of every ancient mammal out there.
Yes, like I think it was, for example, thought for a long time that multituberculates laid eggs. Or that they carried their children in pouches like marsupials. But I think there was like some new work that suggests that they gave birth to like more fully developed young, like placental mammals. I don't remember the details, but yeah, it is. I think the problem is just we have never found egg fossils of any Mesozoic mammal.
Nothing, not even a small one or nothing.
Not that I know of, because obviously these eggs would have been very thin and leathery shelled, so not like calcitic eggshells like birds have. So it would be hard to preserve that unless it's like some Lagerstätte, like those volcanic beds in China. Maybe you can find something like that there.
Well, I think wherever they were laid, wherever they were laid, these eggs were very carefully hidden, so less chance to fossilize.
Definitely, yeah. They probably laid them inside trees or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
There is also this possibility raised. I think their niche had that in a blog post from 2 years ago. Very suggests the possibility that maybe some mammals secondarily redeveloped egg laying, which because there apparently is some evidence that this happened in some squamates. There are what are these called in English? Blindschleiche, blindworms, like these lizards that look like snakes, but they are not actually snakes.
Slow worms or
slow worms, I guess. That's what they're called.
They do give birth to live young.
Yeah,
yes.
They do give birth to live young, but there is also one lineage that lays eggs. But in recent cladistic analysis, they found out that this egg-laying lineage is surrounded on both sides by live-bearing species. Which would imply that they evolved egg-laying secondarily, which I don't know how that would work. But
that's very bizarre. I mean, if our hypothetical early mammal, early Jurassic civilization was derived out of some egg-laying clade, then I think it would make sense there would be a stronger impetus for these things to have a colonial or almost termite-like caste system where there's an actual queen that lays actual eggs, and there are workers that carry these eggs around almost like ants. Now, in the present day, you have naked mole rat which give birth to live young, and they have a sort of colonial-like society system, but I think because of an absence of eggs, they cannot specialize deeply. But imagine there's something that looks like basically for all the definition like egg-laying rats, and I think those things would or could evolve into some pretty weird, hyper-specialized egg-laying forms. So yeah.
Wait, can I show you something? Let me share my screen with you. Like this is this paper that recently found that there was like a whole unknown diversity of monotremes living in Cretaceous Australia. And I just love this paleo art and how the artists illustrate all of these different monotremes, and they are such fascinating looking creatures if they really looked like that.
Yeah,
because it basically is little mammals, but almost with like theropod dinosaur heads. I think your microphone is not working right now.
Sorry, I am looking at this. I'm looking at this painting by Peter Schoten, this really great watercolor artist, and he's got this really incredible technique where every strain of moss and every hair on the animal's bodies is really well clearly rendered, and he's just a really talented artist, and he's illustrated this faunal assemblage of these chunky, almost opossum-like animals. There's a small one that swims, there's an even smaller one that's almost like a dormouse, and there are things that look like badgers, and there's something bigger that kind of looks like a quoll or kind of marten or something. But yeah, as you described, all of these things lack ears. They have these smooth, almost beak-like snouts and these small, almost reptilian eyes on the sides of their body. So imagine, if you will, these things that look like hairy, chunky lizards, and they're just fantastic.
Yeah, and I just want to like develop a whole megafauna out of these things.
Yeah, apparently one of them was pig-sized, so it was pretty mega. It is labeled as Styrtodon, and yeah, the pig-sized Styrtodon elizabethae. So yeah, like a whole new world we never knew existed.
Yes, and imagine you are hypothesizing if these things developed intelligence, it would have again been through the eusocial way of the naked mole rat.
Yep. So
they would become a swarm intelligence.
Yes, swarm intelligence, or remember, some of these things may have been poisonous too, so maybe they guarded their nests really well. And in order to make the impact that an intelligent species would make on the planet, all they would have to do would be to just do some sort of farming or some weird behavioral bioagriculture. Maybe they culture the type of fungus, or maybe somehow they could tame fires and just burn and cook things. Who knows? Or maybe they
could farm little dinosaurs.
Yeah, probably.
Like ants farm aphids.
Yeah, that's not impossible. So something like this. I don't know. I don't see it as a plausible option, but if I was forced at gunpoint to put forward a candidate, it may have been something like that.
To any listener who, by the way, imagines or like comes up with sci-fi scenarios and books and such based on our ideas, if you don't credit us and send us that money, I will find you and I will send fire ant up your ass.
Okay, that's very you have mastered the control of ants, it seems, but that kind of thing happens more often than you think. I mean, I remember going to a science fiction conference with fellow sci-fi authors, Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I'm really sorry, the guy who wrote Fellow Tetrapod. What was his name?
I don't know. I can look it up if you want.
No, it's really embarrassing because I'm good friends with him. But yeah, I'm looking it up too. Fellow Tetrapod. Daniel Benson. Yeah, Daniel Benson, a longtime friend. Sorry, by the way, also for posterity, this is the 13th of July, Saturday, and in 2024. And yesterday I recorded 2 hours of live streaming, which as fellow Turkish streamer Hasan abi would tell you, really sucks the life out of you. So I'm a bit tired, so apologies for that. But yeah, Daniel Benson, the author of Fellow Tetrapod, and Adrian Tchaikovsky, the author of the Children of Time series. I remember meeting them in 2014 in London in a science fiction convention, and we were just bouncing ideas back and forth, and I gave some ideas to Adrian Tchaikovsky, but he credited me in one of his books. It's from the Children of Time series. So he used some of my ideas for dinosauroids and stuff. So yeah, there's that. So a lot of inspiration happens, and I guess I'm always happy and proud when it does.
Yeah, I'm seeing like some of the illustrations in this book are by Tim Morris, who is a great guy. Like he always has such really cool like one-shot ideas at speculative
evolution
scenarios.
Yeah, he's really talented, and he's got entire websites full of these really quirky spins on speculative evolution. I mean, he's got one series where he imagines every African cryptid as a realistic prehistoric survivor. He's got another project where he catalogs these airborne creatures and imagines those as plausible cryptids. So like really talented.
My favorite of his, I forgot the name. I think Terratopia. I think that was the name where he
the land
where he imagines an island where all of these outdated paleontology ideas are like actual creatures.
Yeah, and he's a great researcher, by the way. Yeah, I mean those Terratopia creatures. I mean it's got everything. It's got Troodon as a predatory pachycephalosaur. It has got Basilosaurus as a actual sea serpent. Everything is there.
Or Dinotherium as like a walrus, and
yep.
Yeah, and some of that stuff is so obscure, not even I knew about it, and I learned a lot from. Like everyone, go visit Terratopia. Oh, I hope that's the actual name of the project. Wait.
It is. It's called Teratopia. So there.
Oh wait, there's also a video game with that name, so that might complicate things.
Oh really? Let me search for it too.
I guess just search for Terratopia Tim Morris.
Yes.
To avoid confusion.
Yep.
You even you promoted him on your Twitter, I see.
Yes. So yeah, it's on this web platform called Weebly, by the way. So Weebly. So I'm sure you'll be able to find it. And yeah, I want to go back and give it a reread sometime soon.
Me too. So I think that's it for the Jurassic.
Yep.
Come to the Triassic, which is what we actually wanted to talk about. But
we can finally move to the Triassic. Yes. So actually, the Triassic period is really fantastic because, as this paleo meme goes, it was the era right after a big extinction in the Permian, where almost 80% of all life forms became extinct. So the Triassic was an age of experimentation, and you do have a lot of really weird groups of animals living there. You got things like Tanistrophiids, which have extremely long necks consisting out of like their neck vertebrae are like ski poles, so they're like bunches of sticks with a head on top. There are a number of gliding animals, including something called Charopteryx, which had a gliding membrane on its hind leg. So this thing looks like a frog with very long rear legs and a long tail. And there's a membrane stretched between those like a weird kite. But the front part of the animal probably was not webbed, and I don't know, it's a very bizarre creature. Yes. What else? I mean, I'm sure you know if you could count a few Triassic weirdos yourself.
Well, we are looking for things that could develop intelligence, and
the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, among arboreal species, where we probably want to look first, there are the Drepanosaurs, which are these weird, their classification is still very controversial, but they looked like a mix. Imagine like big fat chameleons, but with the heads of birds.
Yeah, exactly. And one species even has like a claw on top of its tail. I think the same species also has claw bones on its hands that are so big that they have repurposed their ulna and radius. These are the two forearm bones. Like one of them pops out forward and actually binds with this big thumb claw that is also flat and big. We don't know what this thing was doing.
That's the issue with these things for our scenario. Like they are already so specialized that it's hard to imagine something that could. It's hard to imagine something could evolve out of that could hold a tool.
Yeah, I agree. But then again, some other Drepanosaurs actually had a almost chameleon-like split grasping hand.
That is true. Yeah, like Megalanchosaurus is one of those. Yeah, they had these very chameleon-like hands. You're right.
So I think there's a strong candidate. I mean, I could just imagine if for some reason, there are actually ground chameleons that live in deserts. So they used to live in well, on trees, but then their habitat changed. So now they walk on the ground. So something like that. I mean, a ground living version of these very bizarre arboreal grasping creatures. But maybe despite being intelligent, just for shits and giggles, I would imagine this thing would not be very sophisticated, or for whatever reason would maybe have no interest in building agriculture, because those things are insectivores. So who needs it? So along those lines, I'm imagining an intelligent form that only knows how to make music the best. So it picks up little stones and knocks them together with strange, simple melodies. And if you're lucky to go out at that time of the night, you could hear them. But since you weren't, those things got extinct, leaving behind no fossils and no memories. And that was that.
I mean, but couldn't they farm insects?
They probably could, but at most they could have these territorial conflict for like, oh, my territory has 3 termite hills, I'm richer, or something like that, you know?
Well, that's the problem. We are so far back in time, termites don't exist yet, I think.
Oh.
Like, I think all of these colonial insects that you can think of, like ants and termites and such, and bees, they only start showing up in the Cretaceous with the with the evolution of flowering plants. That's something we have to keep in mind.
But there would have to be something like that. But yeah, maybe not as intensely. Oh well, what about your Triassic candidate?
I mean, the thing about the Triassic, it was kind of the golden age of bipedalism.
Yeah.
Because not only did you have the first dinosaurs that were bipeds, but you had all of these different groups of pseudosuchians and generally ornithodyrans that also, I think, independently actually evolved bipedalism. Because like it used to be thought that the earliest archosaurs were already like facultative bipeds, like Euparkeria. But there was this study last year that showed that Euparkeria actually had no adaptations towards bipedalism, and this suggests that all these crocodile ancestors and dinosaurs and such, they evolved that independently from each other, probably because they were already predisposed to it. That then it's called parallelism and not true convergent evolution, but whatever. Anyway, what I'm getting at, you had a lot of creatures running around with 3 hands to use.
Yep. A lot of different lineages, including the classic ancestral dinosaurs like Eoraptor or Herrerasaurus. Even I think the earliest sauropods had 3 hands.
Yeah,
they had big claws on there, but still they could wield them about.
Well, not sauropods, but sauropodomorphs, like Plesiosaurus, of course. But Eoraptor that you mentioned is actually classified today as one of the earliest sauropodomorphs.
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting about that, but true.
Yeah, like the very earliest sauropodomorphs were basically just small theropods in appearance. Like they were still carnivores and small bipeds, and then very quickly they grew into these large plant-eating bipeds like Plesiosaurus, and at the end of the Triassic, some of them started walking on all 4s permanently, and those became the sauropods.
I mean, in that age, the deeper you go back to the root of all dinosaur ancestors, and including the ancestors of pterosaurs, you do arrive at this kind of small-bodied, lightly built, long-limbed and long-armed generalist creature. Something like a Marasuchus, or in fact, I famously predicted something like this in an earlier drawing. And what was the animal called?
Something with a V, like
Venetoraptor.
Venetoraptor, yes, exactly.
I mean, so it's not impossible for something like that to keep.
Oh, look at the Wikipedia page. It's such a cute drawing of it.
Yeah, it's like a cartoon character. So it superficially looks like a small predatory dinosaur with a very long tail, long arms, long legs, and covered in fur. And
what fucks me up that it literally has a beak already.
Yep, that's fascinating too.
Yeah, like it gives a bit of credence to this one idea. What was his name again? Like the guy that came up with the birds came first idea.
Oh, I keep forgetting, not an Italian guy, but yeah, he basically writes all sorts of books like that. Just a second.
Yeah, wait, I know in which book I have to wait, or do I?
Wait, I'm getting to the bottom of this.
You can keep talking while I'm looking for the book.
Well, it's a very sleepy afternoon, and I'm just really having a nice
I found it. I found the book. I found the book.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to look for the relevant chapter. George Olszewski.
And Feduccia, Alan Feduccia.
No, those are two separate ideas. Alan Feduccia believes that birds basically have nothing to do with dinosaurs.
Okay.
George Olszewski, he basically flips everything on its head and says that dinosaurs descend from birds, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like his idea is that the very earliest archosaurs or proto-dinosaurs, proto-pterosaurs were already small arboreal and feathered animals that already looked a lot like birds. And
all
the dinosaurs that came after are secondarily ground living or even secondarily flightless.
I think Gregory Paul was riffing on a variety of this idea when he proposed that therizinosaurs were secondarily flightless.
Paul actually came first. Like, he already proposed this idea that some dinosaurs are actually secondarily flightless all the way in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And Olszewski, I think, only proposed this back in the 90s.
I mean, imagine if that was the case. It just says so much about the potentials of bird evolution, and like seed any world with birds and you could get instant dinosaurs, and that would have been cool.
But for more information, see Serena.
Yeah, but Serena still, the creatures have sort of like a birdiness, but this is just like birds came first and then boom, everything from ankylosaurs to sauropods to allosaurs, and it's just weird and cool to think about.
Yes, but that's the thing, like Venetoraptor and such, they show that there is maybe some truth to this idea. Mm-hmm. Well, not in its extreme form, but yeah, some of the earliest dinosaur and probably also pterosaur ancestors probably were these small, feathered, like bipedal creatures that probably could also climb a bit.
Now, I'm always curious to think about what would happen if something from this earliest radiation evolved into something like an archosaurian monkey, and instead of turning into a pterosaur or a maniraptor, it would specialize once again for nest building and tool construction, and it would be a sight to behold, I think.
Exactly. Well, the problem is we addressed this in the previous episode. Theropods, simply due to anatomical constraints, cannot really become like monkeys, like specialized tree climbers, because they cannot pronate the wrists. And also because of how the dinosaur hip is built with this fenestra in the, like, if you don't know, one of the unique characteristics of dinosaurs is that they have a hole in their hips where the thigh bone fits in like a Lego piece.
Yep.
And only dinosaurs have that, and it means that they actually cannot splay their legs out wide without
too far.
circulating. So they cannot do the splits like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Well,
and both of these both of these things prevent them from basically hugging a tree in the same way an ape or a squirrel could.
Mm-hmm.
So they were, when they wanted to be arboreal, they were restricted in climbing a tree pretty much in the same way as a tree kangaroo would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. Like Gregory S. Paul proposes that this was a major constraint that led to the evolution of birds as we know them. Because if dinosaurs were actually able to become fully arboreal, they probably would have evolved like membranous wings, like pterosaurs or bats instead, and they wouldn't have had such a proclivity to become secondarily flightless again. That's the thing about birds. Even when they don't have wings, they still work very well because they have very good legs. And you cannot say the same about pterosaurs and bats.
Yeah, also, I mean, as you mentioned, the dinosaur hip bone was adapted. Also, the hip had a kind of L-shaped head, so it would fit just in that hole. And yet, it cannot really splay without breaking the head of the hip bone in the socket. So, yeah, don't do that. And so for that reason, you can never have like a dinosaur descendant, at least as we know it, hanging out from a vine like a monkey would. You really can't even rotate your arm backwards and
that is something only apes. That is something only apes can do, actually. Like like this range of motion.
Yeah. So when you're doing jumping jacks, be thankful you're an ape.
Exactly. But yeah, you could still have like an arboreal creature, but it would have to be modeled more after tree kangaroos. Because they have the same thing where they cannot splay their legs.
Yeah. But I still can see something small living in the trees, like those tree people, very early post-dinosauroids, and they would be like dinosaurian Ewoks in a way.
Well, the problem is that, they're actually, most of the deposits we have from the Triassic are like from desert environments.
Yep, true.
But there, around the equator of Pangaea, there probably were a lot of these monsoonal rainforests.
Yeah, nobody knows what lived in them.
Yeah, but we don't have fossils from that because that's not a good environment for fossilization. So who knows what lurked in there?
Yeah. Also, I am curious. I think in the very early Triassic, you had these giant versions of the mammal-like reptiles still dominating the world. Things like Lysoviscia or stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, Lysovicia, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, you are correct.
It's actually from the late Triassic. Like that was one of the very last Dicynodonts.
Oh, bizarre. So still, would you reckon these things would have pig-like intelligence?
Could be. I don't know how large Dicynodont brains were, but that's again that's probably not. Well, brain size isn't everything. But yeah, these things have been alive for a very long time, and they even survived the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. And yeah, I would not be surprised if they did have intelligence comparable to maybe some mammals today.
Yeah, so I would chalk that up as a suitable candidate too. So there.
Yeah, you did a whole video about this idea of eusocial animals like eusocial Dicynodonts that caused the Permian Triassic mass extinction by basically burning the world.
Yeah, exactly. And the eusociality trick is something I like using because as far as we know, there were no monadic intelligences like us. But you could still have something like a civilization and like a great impact on the world just through the virtue of building these basically brainless cities and like not knowing anything about symbols and not knowing anything about language or anything. You could just have animals just repeating certain behaviors over and over and fortifying and changing their environment, and that could quickly upset the balance of the world really fast.
And they just blindly run into extinction.
Yeah, you look at those termite cities in Australia and South America, and they're entire hundreds of kilometers square areas where these termite moons emerge from the ground like giant teeth or tombstones, really. And you could argue that's like a mega city of non-human intelligences right there. So I always imagined something similar, but with either like primitive mammals or monotremes or mammal-like reptiles and so on and so forth. So that's a trope I keep using.
I remember you also have this one drawing where a Plateosaurus walks by some ancient ruins with a vaguely humanoid face.
Oh, yeah. And
did you ever imagine any lore behind that, or do you want to keep that to yourself?
Oh, there's not. The lore isn't that deep. The face is actually an almost exact replica of a theater column I saw in. Well, there's a place called the Bithynia Museum of Archaeology, and Bithynia was one of Alexander the Great's client kingdoms, and today it lies in a Turkish province called Kastamonu and near in neighboring district. So there's like a little known archaeological site there, which is almost as rich as Ephesus. And there was just this one haunting face. And I took a picture of that and just translated it to an imaginary Triassic period. And there's that. The idea was that before the Triassic, so in the Permian period, which is the era we're gonna be seeing next, there could have been a form of lystrosaurs, which were these similar pig-like mammaloid reptiles. And they have a weird fossil thing too. There are these entire deposits where you only have lystrosaurs, nothing else. It's like they're cattle or maybe even like people in a city. They did come in different species, but when they're found, they're always found en masse, and their presence always coincides with these great big extinctions at the end of the Permian. So in my mind, like that weird face-bearing column was a leftover from a civilization built by those creatures, and that was that. There's even a follow-up illustration where I pictured a sort of like a very early armored dinosaur, something like a Scutellosaurus, and it's hiding below a column left behind by this lost civilization. So yeah.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, just look up Kosemen Scutellosaurus and you'll find it.
Okay.
I'm curious to know what you think about it. It's a black and white picture, so it doesn't stand out much.
So in this vision, the civilization, would they themselves be Lystrosaurus, or would they just keep them as pets, as domestic animals?
I think they themselves would be Lystrosaurus somehow.
It's this one, right?
Let me check. Yep, that is the one. Yes.
Nice.
So it's just a picture of an animal sheltering under a column, but a column in that world. So that's where the idea is.
That's like one of my favorite tropes in fiction, this mysterious out-of-place object.
Yeah, and a lost temple and stuff
because
like that.
Because it always feels like just a middle finger to whoever finds it. Like, fuck you, I don't have to explain it.
Well, I mean, this whole lore of out-of-place artifact.
Yeah.
When we were studying the cryptoterrestrial paper, they were making a big deal out of it. So that's always something to hope for.
But it's always such a great story idea, as exemplified by movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Just finding something where it doesn't belong, it already builds up such a mystery.
Yep. There's also a sci-fi book by the name of The Artifact, and I haven't read it. I have it in my library, but I still have to open it and read it sometimes. Wait, it's called The So Artifact with an E. Or was it called The Artifact? But they discovered this 3 million year old cube in Crete or somewhere in Greece. And just a second, just a second.
The Artifact, is it by Michael Gear?
It's either Gregory Benford or the author you mentioned. Once again, it's a bit...
Yeah, it's a very generic title, and I see there's multiple books with that name.
Yeah, even multiple.
Yeah, it also reminds me of this one book called Fragment, where they find an island in the middle of the Pacific that's been separated from the rest of the world since the Cambrian.
It's funny how in those like late 90s books, it's always like a reality TV crew that finds these things. So like that was the deal with the Fragment by Warren Fahey. And yeah, the author of the Artifact is Gregory Benford. I can confirm this. Sounds interesting. It's one of those like, you know, you go to a holiday and it's like an old hotel, and in the lobby there's this book. A small cube of rock has been unearthed in a 3,500-year-old Mycenaean tomb, and an incomprehensible object in an impossible place. Its age, purpose, and origins are unknown. And then there's a big spy thriller after that. So, like, go check it out if that's your kind of thing. But which also, let us ask our audience, since you really comment a lot on these videos, which out-of-place artifact would you like to be real, or what is the most mysterious real-life, in quotes, out-of-place artifact lore you have read? Like, share it with us in the comments, so we know what's what.
I can tell you one.
Which is it?
Do you know? You probably know. Mars has a moon called Phobos.
Yep.
And on one of the satellite pictures, you can literally see the monolith from 2001.
Really? I did not know about this.
Literally something that looks like the monolith, and you can see that it literally is sticking out straight out of the surface because you can see the shadow of the object. And yeah, I think it even has its own Wikipedia page, the Phobos monolith.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at it as you search now. The Phobos monolith.
You see it? I mean, it probably is just a really big boulder.
It's just a rock. I mean, even the shadow is not rectangular. But
yeah, but apparently, maybe I misremember, but apparently the estimated size of this is like 90 meters tall.
Whoa.
So like a
Okay.
small skyscraper.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
okay.
a big boulder just sticking out straight out of the surface of this moon, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, if
Next
space
we go-
travel was ever practical, this would be a prime tourist location, because it would be like Alice Springs in Australia, where you go and, you know, there's this big famous Ayers Rock in the middle of the desert. They call it Uluru. And wow, I'm looking at another picture of this Mars monolith now, and
Yeah, me too.
this is an object on the surface of Mars. That's far more uncanny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks actually rectangular. That's right.
Yeah. So this is something I would like to believe.
Yeah, but it could just be, you know, one of these desert rocks that have been carved by the wind into these very weird shapes.
Yeah, it's kind of
Find it
split
all
up.
the time in Egypt and such.
Maybe it's Elon Musk's secret Mars program already there.
I don't think Elon Musk is competent enough to get anything to Mars. That's the interesting thing, by the way, discussed in the original Silurian Hypothesis paper. That maybe one of the places where we could find evidence of a past civilization from Earth would be on the Moon and Mars.
Yeah, because they had a space program.
Yeah, because those would be the only places unaffected by Earth's erosion and plate tectonic. So yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen this a lot in like comics and such already. Like, imagine you go on the moon and you find there like a dinosaur skeleton fossilized inside a spacesuit. And
well, you know, there's actually a very weird pseudoscience theory about that. And it just happens to be in my YouTube to-do folder. And there's this crazy Indian researcher.
Oh my God, I know which one you mean.
Yeah, it's called, her last name is Saxena, Saxena. And so they literally look at, so they have scientific articles with titles like burial pits with animal and alien skulls present on the south pole of the moon suggest humans and aliens may have existed on the moon at some time. And then discoveries of Sri Yantra or like Hindu pyramid type objects on the moon, and they're all based on these like really sketchy radar scan images of the moon. One paper is called "Is the Moon Littered with Dinosaur Remnants of the Mesozoic Era?" But the quote-unquote dinosaurs they report are like kaiju sized. So it says, like, one image says there's a T-Rex skull in the
not just that, like he also says he found like a dragon skeleton on the moon. And how do you write something like that and not see yourself as a dunce? Like this, at some point it has to be trolling, no?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, you know, some people, again, I mean, scientific publication has become so routine and it adheres just to the rules of the process rather than the spirit of it. So if you only focus on the rules, guys like this could argue very weird hypotheses. There's nothing stopping them. I think there's a like genuine case of crank science involved too, where like, the guy just wants to make a discovery. I think this is also the operating principle behind some of those flat earth people.
Yeah.
So there's that, you want to believe. I mean, there are similar guys. Also, there was this like Japanese scientist who found like tiny stones and imagined he was seeing like fossils of 2 centimeter tall people in them and stuff like that. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Regarding India, apparently they have a big problem with a lot of these cranks managing to get their papers into what is by their standards peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah.
And have you ever heard of the Himalayan fossil hoax?
No, what is it?
So there was this guy, I think Gupta was his name, who like he wrote a lot of scientific papers that actually built up a lot of the basic groundwork for all the geology of the Himalayas. And an Australian researcher like investigated these and found out that many of the fossils he reported from the sites did not actually come from there, but he bought them on like a Moroccan fossil market. And almost all of his work on fossils from the Himalayas was faked. It was hoax, and he basically managed to make them appear serious by always co-authoring his papers with accredited scientists from elsewhere. Like he basically just go to the co-author and he told them, okay, look, I found this and this, you want to write this with me? And like he deceived them too, so that they would lend their name for the paper. And yeah, when this came out, it was actually like, this is actually seen as the worst hoax in paleontology history, even worse than like Piltdown Man and such, because it invalidated so much work that was built upon that data. And in the subsequent fallout, it came out that apparently this entire system this guy was working in, like this entire scientific system of the university and such, it was organized like a mafia.
Yep.
And one of his students that wanted to expose some more of his frauds was run over by a car suddenly before he could. And the student survived, but a few weeks later, his mother got also run over by a car and died. And so these guys, I think, are literally sending out assassins to...
I mean, people have been killed for less. And I mean, India has 1,200,000,000 people. So in that big a number, you have to have, statistically speaking, a lot of cranks. And also, this is a problem all over the world. I think a lot of science that comes out of China is similarly questionable. And
like a lot of the engineering work there has not been able to be replicated by scientists elsewhere.
Yeah. And so you would be surprised that I think a lot of in the present day, companies like Elsevier and those science publication companies, they're also fomenting the ground for stuff like this to take root in, basically.
Yeah, that's another problem. I think also in India that they have a lot of these predatory journals where you have to pay a lot of money, but when you pay that, you can just publish anything you want in them.
Yeah, well, even in more respected journals like Nature, they charge publication fees. Yeah. I mean, Nature famously charges like something like, don't quote me on the number, but like £2,000 as like a publication fee.
Wow,
so
that's a lot.
They end up selecting for like big laboratories or like big university researchers with tenure and stuff. But yeah, it's just a really ugly side of the whole thing. I mean, I guess when you turn these things into businesses or even, it doesn't even have to be with capitalism. When you look at something only through the lens of rules, in given enough time, there will emerge people who exploit those rules, and give it some more time, and those people will learn to use those rules for their own power. I mean, the situation is similar in the governmental art. So in a lot of countries, the governments have grants for art, like movies and stuff like that, culture, theater work and stuff. But in a lot of countries, there are these, once again, as you said, predatory mafia groups of people who know how to work the system. They're sometimes related. Like you would have cases like there's a company that helps with art grant applications and their cousin also works in the culture ministry or stuff like that. So they only greenlight these like really stupid and obscure and just pointless things, and the money gets transferred and something gets displayed, but that's that. It's just a modern form of corruption.
That's also how the myth got started that vaccines cause autism. You know that story?
I have no idea.
There was this group of Karen-esque moms that wanted to make like a class action lawsuit because they believed in this conspiracy theory. And the lawyer representing them, he basically hired a scientist, a doctor, Andrew Wakefield, to carry out a study that would basically prove that point.
Yep.
And he did that study, and there was just so much fraud behind it, and literally even child abuse and such. Like they tested autistic children and looked if there was any correlation between the time of the diagnosis and when they were vaccinated. And so it turned out some of the children weren't even autistic.
Yep.
And some of the procedures that they did with those children were not made for children. Like they were like colonoscopies, for example.
Oh,
and such.
shit.
And some of these children got seriously abused and hurt. and it's awful. And yeah, this paper has since then thankfully been retracted by the journal.
But the damage is done.
And yeah, and Wakefield has his medical license revoked. So yeah, you can't call him a doctor anymore. Even though the BBC sometimes I think still does that because they are dicks.
Well, you know what? I automatically mistrust any non-medical person who has a PhD and calls themselves doctor. Like, I automatically mistrust them. And yeah, people have this naive trust in science. It is assumed that, okay, if somebody does science, the data must be correct. But you would be surprised at all levels of life, like corporate life, academic life, just people sometimes just cook numbers. I mean, there are ways to detect them. I mean, when people make up numbers, they tend to secretly follow certain algorithms. So sometimes you uncover fraud that way. But yeah.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
You just wanted to talk about funny dinosaur man.
Yeah, but yeah, we at least created a few of those. And we came to this crushing realization of the futility of modern society. All right, so it's 5 p.m. where I live now, and it's summer. I think every cell in my body is working hard to dump melatonin into my system. This has been such a nice conversation that I feel very mellow. And if we assume we have said the last for the Triassic period, I suggest let us take a sleep break and continue our deep time dive expedition next episode with the Permian and see where we can go.
I have one more group we should discuss.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what about the Pseudosuchians, those bipedal crocodile ancestors?
Oh, things like Smok, Wawelski, and those creatures, right?
Yeah, but there were also more gracile ones that looked a lot like theropods.
Ephigia was one, I think.
Ephigia, yeah, that one actually looked like an ornithomimosaur almost.
Yeah, I mean, for our audience's posterity, these are animals that they're like the 1980s versions of scaly, cold-blooded dinosaurs, but for real. They come from a crocodile-grade ancestor, and some of them have body plans that strangely look like those of dinosaurs. But they have this thing at their ankles. I think that's how they're separated. So dinosaur-grade archosaurs have a bird-like ankle, which is like a simple, almost like a door hinge-like joint. It's very straight and it swivels back and forth. These other guys, they got these like crocodile-type ankle in which the foot bends through a jumble of complicated foot bones, basically. So they can't really do the whole like weird bird knee thing, you know. And they're almost always like semi-digitigrade or almost sometimes flat-footed. So they got this like weird, almost like in many reconstructions, they look like they're wearing pants, which is funny. And yeah, so there are those types of things. And I actually had an illustration of an intelligent prolacartiform created back in the day. But this thing was so derived that it didn't look like anything alive today. It basically looked like a very long-bodied thing with like a bird-like beak and like some fun times.
I think prolacartiforms are even more primitive creatures, like archosauriforms.
Yeah, they're even more basal to the creatures we're just discussing.
It's the group that sometimes is also called Protorosauria, to which belongs Tanystropheus and also Charopteryx and such.
All the freaks go there.
Basically, yeah.
Well, I mean, certainly. I mean, this is a clade where something like the real Yılane could come from. The description of Yılane we studied when looking at the West of Eden series, it looks like one of those crocodile-grade archosaurs, far more than a mosasaur, that's for sure. And why not? There could be a civilization of very slow, maybe not that slow, but like more astute, meditative reptiles, and then these feathered psychos show up and they just kind of tear up the place. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there was a big mass extinction at the end of the Triassic that it is often attributed to like an increase in volcanism because Pangaea was breaking up and such. But yeah, maybe it was like CO2 gases from crocodile cities. Maybe
to keep warm, to keep warm.
Yeah, you remember the Kremlings from Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, those exactly look like.
Yeah, maybe they had like a King K. Rool and such and pirate ships.
Oh, In the Donkey Kong series, did you ever go to the secret world? I think it was in Donkey Kong 2. There's a secret level.
I think, yeah, Donkey Kong 2 and 3, they had the secret world. And yeah, even the newer games on the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had some cool levels there. Like there was this one level with like really cool music in Donkey Kong Country 2. Like
it's the one track, with the volcano.
Yeah, there is this one track called Primal Rave, and it sounds like it's kind of like generic jungle music, but it sounds so cool because it has these very cool vocals of like tribal people shouting. Maybe you can put that in like the background of this video.
Okay, I will do that. I mean, I'm thinking about one soundtrack with the secret Donkey Kong level. It's got a volcano that's like continuously shooting plasma into the sky, and that's the level map. And within the map, there are like 4 or 5 bonus levels, and they're extremely difficult, but you get lots of fun playing them. And the map theme music was it's like a rock soundtrack.
Donkey Kong Country 2 is one of the best games that's
ever. They really enjoyed making them. And
I mean, Donkey Kong Country 3 sometimes gets a bad rap, but that one is also really cool. Have you played that one?
I've played 1 and 2. The second game was incredible.
Yeah, the third one
was with the girl monkey who could glide with her hair, right?
Yeah, Dixie Kong, and that one is interesting. It actually goes into like the whole world is kind of Canada theme.
I think I played that too, but I remember the second one was like they pushed everything to the max. It was like they really enjoyed making those games.
Yeah, I think you would really enjoy the new games that come out on the Switch, like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. That's the name.
As Darth Vader says in The Return of Jedi, it is too late for me. But yeah, so that being said, with Archosaurian Donkey Kong enemy Captain K. Rool civilization.
I mean, listen, we had the idea of these like island mammals in the Jurassic that develop intelligence. Maybe they look like large lemurs, or maybe they even look like Donkey Kong, and they battle these Pseudozuchians from the Triassic.
Actually, Donkey Kong games were a secret message to warn us. It's like the Finnish Ugaritic Hyper War or something.
But not like now we have a solid video game idea, like not Donkey Kong Country, but very similar.
It would be Triassic Kong or something. I don't know. Oh well, man, this was really great. Sorry, like sleep is tugging at my nerves like a siren song at the moment. And I think famously in one of our podcasts, we were recording at 1 a.m. for me, and I was like,
yeah, and like someone in the comments asked like if you were on drugs or something.
Well, I won't deny it. Like these conversations are such easygoing that there are times where my eyes close and I can still talk, but I'm like tapping into a baser part of my brain, and I'll still continue the dialogue. So that's great. Yeah. All right, that's that from me. Any last points?
No. If anyone in the comments can also come up with an idea for a civilization from this time period, feel free to share.
All right, and as always, please feel free to care too, and consider donating to us. You know, you might be listening to this recording a year after we made it. Who knows? But if you do, we'll still be around. So please consider donating to us.
Yeah, this time machine does not run on plutonium, but on Patreon money.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that from us. Thank you once again, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.